Let's start right out. Hey, what happened?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. My name is Dean. The entire crew you see will meet in just a second. But welcome to the show. We're back almost the end of the week, which is great. We got a ton of fucking stuff to get to, like a ton of stuff. Adam Scorgie, part 2 of our interview with filmmaker, producer, director Adam Scorgie. GoFundMe master, Kickstarter master, guy who's been trapped in the house with his kids master. Adam Scorgie will join us coming up in just a couple of seconds. I call him Scorgie. Pals, yep. No big deal. It's part 2 of the interview too, because we got shafted while we shafted him. The last time we had him on the show. We'll also talk about Earth Day because it's a big day today. I did jack shit for it. Bonzi's in Waco are almost there, so we'll ask about the massacre. Doug Ford cried his dick off this morning, and some people want to shoot me. So let's meet everybody today, shall we? Please welcome to the program Adam Scorgie, James DeFiore, Lachlan Cross, and Greg Bond, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see everybody today. Nice to see everybody. Good to have you back. I feel like this is part 2, Adam. I feel like
we had to get cut short last time. Sorry, that was I think Daddy Duties came in. We had technical difficulties at the beginning, but we got lots of time to chat and get into it today.
Yeah, really excited because you're open-ended. And the last time you were here, you might have been late to pick up your kids from school, one of the two. I'm not too sure. But it started this fucking great conversation with Lachlan and I because we're both in radio, both did mornings for a long time. And sometimes on a Thursday or Friday, you'd hit the bar at like 11:30, 12 o'clock. And then you'd get this panicked phone call from your wife at like 3:15. Where the fuck are you? So I was hoping after that podcast that you didn't shaft your wife and get a phone call from her going,
put the kids in an Uber.
You didn't pick the kids up.
I'll send them a cab.
I'm way too scared of my wife to do that. My wife is me and her. I've thrown my share of knuckles in the day, but my wife and I would probably go pretty good toe to toe. So I don't dare be late.
Yeah, it's a good call. How have you guys been handling? You got young kids, right, Adam?
Yeah, so my youngest Beckham just turned 6, and then my middle guy Ryder's 9, then my daughter's turning 15. So we've got the full gamut. So we've been okay. My wife she sells liquor, and that's an essential service. So we've been okay there. And then people are consuming content like crazy. So the film industry, we've been good there too. I've got lots on the hopper, and then Bisbing just released on Super Channel exclusively here in Canada and be releasing worldwide with a big studio in the fall. I can't announce exactly what studio until that, but if you take a look at our last film, you can take a good guess.
Universal.
And now's the funding times for other stuff. So it's been, we've been navigating things with the pandemic. It's constantly an interesting thing. Our travel's gone way up on one of our projects because we had to travel to the US a lot for Breaking Olympia, a project that we partnered with $7 Productions, the Rocks company. So it's been really interesting when you see how the pandemic is treated in different states, because in total I think we did like 10 different states, and you can see why conspiracies and stuff get attached to, because literally even the pandemic gets politicized, because if you're in a red state, they're much more open. And if you're in a blue state, they want to lock you down forever. So, and then the most interesting one is when we were in Nevada, which used to be red and now has gone blue, they were open 50%. So it was almost like they said, well, we can't go, we'll go 50%.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see on our last shoot just how differently it was perceived from state to state to state.
Yeah, it's got to be. Like, I was talking to someone today about this new travel ban that they're talking about, because this India variant has got like a double mutation, which doesn't mean anything, and everybody's freaking out and screaming about, stop all the flights from India. But the problem is that you can't just stop the flights from India. You got to stop the flights coming in from everywhere, because you can get on a plane in India, you can land in England, and then you can beatbox your way over here to Canada, right? Like that's there's no travel restrictions from other countries preventing people from coming from India, which is. It's been such a fucking crapshoot. And as someone who travels a lot still, did you, like, when you went through customs, would you see things that would concern you as a Canadian, knowing that, hey, listen, we're dealing with these variants and they're still flying into countries? You got to do it for work and it's essential. And I get that. Yeah. But did you see anything that you were like, fuck, no wonder we have a million cases?
Well, this is the part that is, the government's done the big hoodwink on all of them. And this is what feeds the conspiracy theory, but like just sloppiness, right? It's never, to me, I never go on the side of some nefarious overlord planning things, because most of these people in politics, if you've ever been to Capitol Hill and seen here, like Parliament Hill, like these people can't even agree on what day of the week it is, let alone get together and try to come with some plan to take over. But, what was really, disheartening and frustrating to me is our government's putting restrictions on us as Canadians. And then right early on, when we were hearing about this from China, and it hadn't really hit North America yet, but we knew something was there. And we had direct flights coming right to Edmonton. We're 500 people from China were getting off now. I remember thinking then, being like, I don't really know if we should be letting people from China in right now, with what's going on. I'm like, it'll probably be like SARS or whatever else, and no big deal. But, to bring your point, you don't think of then people just get clever, right? And they'll go from here to there, they'll go to the US, and then they'll come in. So, I guess it's easier on the outside to look, but I do know with this hotel restriction thing they're doing with the 3 days, that's complete bullshit. Is
that new in Canada? I haven't heard that one. What is
Yeah,
it?
my daughter has to do that. She's coming in from Spain, and we have to fly her in, and she's got to stay in Calgary until she gets a positive test. So you have to, it's like 900 or negative. Sorry. Yeah. You have to get a 3-day room, and it's $900, and you don't get that money back.
1,500 at some other places. When we went through Vancouver, it's 1,500 flat rate. So we just had this, and this is where things always get complicated. So our team, we just came back. And we all apply for exemption letters as essential service in the media. And then this is where it's up to the border guard on how they interpret the language. So our director got exempt. He got let go in the same airport, Vancouver, stall 10 and stall 7. Director gets through. Our producer, the customs guy, goes, no, according to the language, you don't travel frequently enough in order for this to be considered frequent travel. And it was our one producer that speaks very well, and he was like, I've traveled 4 times in 6 months. In today's standards, that is really frequent, right? And we were advised by the health authorities to do it the way we did, where rather than flying every 2 weeks for 5 days, we went, once a month for 2.5 weeks, so that we would stay in a bubble. We'd get tested before and after when we land, several times when we're there. We'd stay in an Airbnb. We'd keep in our cohorts. We'd mask. We'd do all the guidelines we could to be as safe as possible, and then fly home. And that was what the health authorities advised, said, yep, that's probably better than going back and forth several times a month. And that's what, Border Patrol had said at the time. But at this time, this guy wanted to get the gold star. And he said, no, the frequent travel is made for bi-weekly travelers and people that travel every week. My producer said, well, my director just got through. And the guy's like, well, I don't know what they're doing at other airports or other customs border patrol, but this is what we're doing here. And he's like, no, right there with your associate. And then he called over his associate, and they got into a screaming match because they interpreted the language differently. The guy's like, nope, that's not what the frequent travel is meant to be. And the other guy said,
the customs guys started yelling at each other.
They started arguing.
Well, that's a unified front right there.
They started arguing because the one guy backed our producer Andy and said, no, he's like, you are adding that interpretation to it. All it says is people that have exemptions for businesses, and media and film was one of them, right? Mm-hmm. They have to travel frequently. That's all it said. So this guy was adding the layers of what he thought frequently was, whether that was weekly, bi-weekly. So then Andy very calmly just said, well, is there a superintendent we can get to kind of get a third party? Because clearly you guys are, interpreting the language differently. So we should probably look at this. So they brought in the supervisor, but the rule is with Border Patrol, or at least that's what the supervisor said, is even if I agree I cannot overrule what one of my guys said. But even he agreed. He said, the way you guys are doing it is probably the safest way. I do agree you've traveled frequently enough. They even got 2 of the health officials over. They agreed as well. But at this point, the customs guy had made his stance and said, nope, you are going to one of the hotels. And this is where the superintendent even said, he's like, because Andy said, okay, well, I don't get the hotel. I provided a negative test. I have no symptoms. I'm negative now. I'm willing to do another test, but I should just quarantine at home. If you're going to send me to a place where there's possibly a whole bunch of other people that are all infected in the same building, I don't understand how this helps anything. And the superintendent even said, he's like, oh no, we can provide no evidence that this helps. This is solely to deter people from traveling. That's it. It was implemented. We can't put any stats that it helps anything other than it is just a financial deterrent to get you to not travel.
So it had nothing to do with stopping spread of COVID-19. It had everything to do with scaring the shit out of people from traveling, so they wouldn't bring it back into the countries.
And he said that out loud. He said that to Andy out loud. He didn't say it in front of his other people, but that's what he said. And then Andy was like, well, that's crazy. He said, because Andy, it was very well spoken, just said, you understand my frustration here is two of your own guys are interpreting the language differently. One is saying, no, it's this way. And the other guy, and he's like, oh yeah.
Are you sure that's all he said? Are you sure he said two of the guys are normal and one guy's a cock? Are you sure he didn't say that?
I mean, I'm sure he had to back his guy, right? Anybody with a uniform, even if they're, but I mean, we do that with our homies, right? Even if our homie's kind of out of line, you know, or your family, you'll back them, right? And say, well, he's being a dick, but you gotta have his back, right? So
I sell people down the fucking river all the time.
Here's the kicker though, Locke. Check this. So then he gets his other negative test, like the third negative test he's had in 5 days in the hotel. So he's like, perfect. Okay, I've only stayed one night. You know, charge me $500, give me $1,000 back. Because it was $1,500, which the production, I had to pay for because I brought him down there and I'm hiring him and I'm taking him away from work.
You were paying for free hotel room and he said, no, tell my boss he can keep the $1,000. I had to stay.
No.
I had a room service the shit out of that thing.
Dean, here's the thing. They said, no, you can't do that. Like it's a flat fee. You have
to pay.
You don't. And then that's again where like, and this is where I see like Chris was on the other, like, I understand, like, that doesn't make sense to me. What other business can you just say, I'm not using your services, but we charge you, right? And here's the kicker. If he had tested positive, the way they were doing it there, I know in Alberta, I think they have other hotels or Ontario, they send him home after the 3 days anyway, even if he tested positive.
Fucking wild.
So Andy goes, what the fuck is the point of that? Right? Yeah. Like, they're going to send me, that's where I wanted to go in the first place. I was going to quarantine at home and do it there anyway. So it's a shit show right now. It's not, and this is,
and it's no wonder everybody is getting so wound up, right?
Yeah,
like,
and then they say, that's, you know, and then people start looking at like, well, are these hotels all owned by people in Parliament that are getting benefits from this? And who knows? I don't know the answer to that. I haven't done enough digging into it, but it's pretty sketchy, right?
And you get advice too from everybody out there, right? From the freedom fighters to, you know, your buddies, you know, Dad, when she hits the ground, this is for my daughter, right? 21.
Yeah.
When she hits the ground, tell her to tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
My 21-year-old blonde ballet dancer daughter is going to tell them to pound sand and she's just going to come home. Yeah. No, we're going to follow the fucking rules and we're going to chew on the $900. I'm not going to put her through that. Yeah. Oh, no, they can't stop her. She's a Canadian citizen. She has her rights. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
There's a lot of weird activity economically, and I know it's sort of like low on the totem pole stuff, but when it comes to things like kids activities that got canceled in 2020, all the private teachers and instructors, like for example, my little 4-year-old is in like a dance class or whatever, and she refunded the money that we paid because you pay a bulk fee or whatever for like 10 lessons. But everything that took place at a government or military owned facility, like the swimming lessons that we gave both of our kids, they just kept the money, and they sent this email saying, we have decided that the whatever you paid for the 2020 year and for the swimming lessons at such and such military facility, that money will not be refunded after discussion at committee. We thank you and we hope to see you in 2021. And it was like, what the fuck, right? And you couldn't get it back. Like, I tried my best to get it back, but it was all governmental and military owned facilities. So I don't know what it means, but I'm sure it has something to do with the New World Order.
No, it doesn't, dude. I'm just letting you know right now, it doesn't have anything to do with it. But you know,
you're getting wake up.
Scorgie, you bring up a good point, and the point being that the rules are so fucked up and so open to interpretation. If you read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as well as an Emergency Act, you know the Emergency Act usurps the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the time of a pandemic. But then it's got fucking language in it that says stuff like, if the application isn't abused. Well, what's the abuse? I would call what happened to your buddy Andy an abuse of the application, right?
Well, so we've been exempt every other time. Never had a problem. Always taken exempt. Like we traveled through the same ports so that they would have record because everything's on there now. None of us had ever tested positive. We'd all done everything as safe as possible. We even filmed during the Olympia with 4,500 people, but you know, we wore masks. We had the N95s. Like we did everything as good as we could. Like the show had to go on, but we still had to try to be within, you know, operate as safely as we could. We could no longer push our loans and everything back, right? We already went way over budget because we're having to pay to get tested all the time. And we had a false positive when we were in New York, which was a nightmare because it was $250 a pop. And then we had to change the interviews and we had to leave the location and then get everybody retested. And you know, so it sucks. Like nobody, I hate these restrictions and rules as much as anyone, right? And I see like any good conspiracy theory or any theory, like there is elements of truth, right? And there are bits of like, there's government overstepping and negligence and things that drive you crazy, right? That you're like, look, see there, you're like, yeah, but then you attach it to this vine that goes to like 100 other things, right? And like, and again, because I'm the documentary guy, when this first happened, when things were first getting, this is the first time we'd ever seen anything like this, and things are shutting down in schools and sports, and I was getting indoctrinated.
You were alive in 1918, Adam? You were alive for the last Spanish flu?
I wish I had some secret formula for life, but I do not. I'm not that clever. I'm kind of just a grinder that figures things out. But I would tell people like little things when you're looking at information, like things that we have to do as a doc and I don't know, like quasi researcher or journalist, right? Is like when you see a YouTube video that is well put together, you know they've done their proper legal clearances if in the back they have all the references of their material. So at the beginning, when the pandemic happened, all these documentaries are coming out. The first thing I do before I even go, people say, you got to watch it. I go to the back. I'm like, they haven't referenced any of their source material, which means they haven't got proper legal clearances to make sure any of the information they're presenting is factual or correct. But yet, for some reason, people want to hang. They're like, oh, like I would even say they're like, oh, well, where do you get that? I'm like, well, this is what I do for a living, right?
Yeah,
like,
but Adam, we both know how hard it is to get through errors and omissions, though. So they just had to skip that step.
Yeah, well, they'll put a little thing in the front saying we operate under fair use and blah, blah. But in order to actually do fair use, you actually have to do a clearance log. You go through your lawyer. You make sure you're using a clip appropriately, that you're backing it up with the proper stuff. And you have to go through all this. You don't just pull clips from movies to push an agenda that you want, and that's where I'd watch. And again, like all these docs that were coming out, there would be elements of truth, right? Small.
Like which ones? Which ones are you referring to? Because what you're talking about is
I don't want to even give them like prop, like honestly, because like they were ones like if early in the pandemic they were sky, and because for the first time
rhymes with pandemic, one of them.
Like they were getting millions of views, right? Because people are like, yes, this is like people are looking. What I've kind of, the little bit of reading I've done, and I don't claim to be an expert, but it looks like we're all looking for answers on how to get out of this. And it's much easier to have like a bad guy, right? To be like, they are the villains. It is the New World Order. It is Bill Gates. It is like, It's so much easier to have a villain that you can direct your anger and frustration or failures and whatever you're currently doing in your own life to point things at, right? Yeah. So that's, again, I have this is just my own kind of viewing and kind of
but you know what, I don't think you're far off, Scorgie. I think that we talk about it often here. We talk about that victim mentality, and when you've got an entire group of victims who don't want their freedoms to be taken away from them, they'll reach for any information they can to bolster their argument in the public forum. So what we have is disinformation being passed on by people, some with huge followings, some really important people, like some people that you would think, oh, that guy can't be that fucking ridiculous,
and again,
but they are.
And there's elements when I watch Dean, I'm like I agree with their point there, and I agree with their point there. Yeah. But then it kind of gets into this whole other thing, like, whoa, you're losing me there, right?
That's where as society, we're supposed to pick sides, right? Like I haven't seen many people do what we do, which is okay. Listen, I want to know, like the reason why we interviewed Chris Sky last week, and I know you watched it. Yeah. The reason why we interviewed him is because we want to know about that side. So you got to know about that side. You got to talk about that side. Exactly. Tell me about yourself.
He does have elements that are like, because even when we came through and we had this recent one, and you're talking to friends of mine in law enforcement, is that they are really at the airport to keep the peace, right? They are not there to, like, they will issue citation, but they are there to keep the peace. Like the law is really murky right now. Mm-hmm. And like, he is right that none of the tickets are really sticking. The only one that really stuck was the pastor here that just blatantly abused and just said screw you, and
Grace Life guy.
They still didn't make him pay. But he ended up in the courts, so it may end up setting a precedent moving forward, right? And that's the thing that everybody forgets about too with our legal system. And of course, I'm on this pod because I'm a legal expert. Is that we need to establish precedent in Canada, right? Something needs to be in front of the courts, and it needs to get through.
It was the same in the U.S., right? Once they have a precedent, a precedent, because we use this for fair use all the time, that we always use the American policies, and we get a global policy to cover our films, so we satisfy the Canadian broadcasters, and they never want to challenge if you come through the U.S., because every time it has gone to the Supreme Court, it's ruled in favor of the creator. So they're scared that if I think there's two major statutes set. So if a third one happens, like the big companies will never win. So nobody challenges if you get the right lawyer to do your clearance and you do your diligence and you back it up with the proper stats. They don't want to go there. So
let me ask you a quick question. Who can fuck off first? The conspiracy guy who bastardizes information, who's kind to write about a couple of things, but as you said, sends it a Vine and it gets destroyed and people start getting sick. Can that guy fuck off first, or can the ultra woke person that tells everybody that, because listen, we're talking about one side of this. There's another whole side of fighters that think they got it all fucking figured out, who want to come at you in a grocery store for maybe having your mask below your nose or yell at you about your kids. Like, they can fuck off too. Which one can fuck off first in your mind?
Man, honestly, like, just from the little bit I've been experienced with my daughter, like I would almost say the Karens of like, you're killing grandmothers can fuck off too, right? Like, they're like, because here's the thing, that in my logic, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to infect anyone that's close to you unless they're breaking the fucking rules. Because sure, I'm going out, sure, I'm working, but I'm doing everything I can to stay within the guidelines and do it legally. And people are like, you're not legally allowed to travel. Yeah, actually, you are.
You say that to you?
Yeah, there's a few. This happened on.
Dean, we get called out all the time for even just saying we were doing one thing, or we did this, or Jimmy did this, thing? Or I don't know if it's an Alberta thing.
I listened to a really great speaker on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about that, and it's become, because this has caused so much anxiety and pressure on our society, that's given people that aren't satisfied with the way things are going in their life a way to grandstand on others, right? To be like, the pandemic is going on because of people like you. You are the reason this is going on. And that's even the government's done a good way of hoodwinking that it's our fault, kind of being like, well, if you guys weren't hanging out, this would have been over. And it's like, no, the international flights are where this came from. Maybe if you guys would have locked down hard at the beginning, we wouldn't have had to come here. So don't try to put this is all on like, I'm not saying it's one or the other, but everyone is that it's just our fault. To be like, no, it's a pandemic. It's probably going to run its course no matter what, unless we did an extreme lockdown at the beginning. That seems to be the only thing. But as much as I'm not a huge fan of Kenny, like, I like that he tried to do an approach. Like, it's scary to go either way. You have the NDP saying lock down everything. And I'm like, yeah, you guys are making 150 to 300 grand a year. You guys don't give a fuck if it locks down for 10 years. But I have friends of mine that own businesses that have, they're trying to see how they're going to feed their kids next month. So of course you don't care about a lockdown, right? And then, you have conservatives try to usually keep most things open, right? And kind of people say, well, they don't care about the elderly. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be in any of their positions right now, because you can't win. You're a loser on either side. Like, I don't know if you guys watch, because I was just trying to get caught up because I hadn't really been paying attention. I've been busy doing paperwork, what even is the rules currently, because they're changing every week. And sometimes they just sneakily put things on the Alberta Health website and you're like, whoa, that changed from, so I was listening to Kenny's like Q&A on Facebook, and, he had a pretty heartfelt moment where he was just like, guys, like, I get pandered by my own team anytime I restrict anything. I get slammed by the NDP every day for not locking us down for the next 6 months. Like, you think I'm not COVID exhausted? Like, man, like, you can see, like, he almost wanted to be like, screw this shit, I'm done. Like, I felt for him. I was like, man, I would not take your position.
Yeah.
No chance.
The good thing about Kenny is his mom's a great cook, so he can just yell upstairs and he can get like some chicken meatloaf.
All the politicians can, that's even like when NDP was pushing against them hard and being like, we're all in this together. I'm like, okay, here's how you show me you're all in this together. Let's have because you guys are funded by taxpayers. Why don't you guys forfeit 30 to 40% of your cushy salary? And that's being fair. Some of them have more than cushy salaries, to businesses most affected and frontline workers, and show us that you're really in this together with us, rather than just saying it while you collect your big pension and your big payday. And a lot of them were traveling and doing stuff anyway, right? But, I feel the frustration. I see where people on both sides are getting frustrated. And I am too. I'm seeing like my kids, like the biggest thing that it's affected is my kids and their social activities, right? Like, it's tough to always be like, no, you can't go hang out with your friends. Like, no, my daughter really wants to play college hockey, and these are pivotal years to getting scouted and getting noticed. And that's why actually she got invited to go play in the States. And I was like, my wife had vacation that she didn't get to use from the year before. I'm like, you guys just go. get tested, quarantine, go. We'll deal with the ramifications when you come back, but you're getting scout, like, just go. Like, we're going to be locked up forever. Follow the guidelines as safe as possible. You are legally allowed to travel, so go do it. Schooling, I knew was going to be online in no time anyway. I'm like, you can pick up any of your school online because they're going to shut it down anyway. So
must have been crushing for you to tell your wife and one of your children to leave the house for a few days so you could enjoy the liquor cabinet. Must have.
No, I still have my 2 young boys, so it wasn't that was the trade-off, right?
I find it's much easier to get drunk in front of your children when they're male.
Yeah.
Like the female children, when you're 6 deep and you're yelling at them to go get you another beer. You know,
female children are more built for shrooms because they'll just
okay, so Adam Scorgie is our guest, filmmaker, director. He's done every cool doc you've ever seen, and we're talking a little bit about this COVID issue that we're having, because this is the first conversation we've had with someone who doesn't straddle both sides but uses some common sense and doesn't point fingers. And I'm a huge finger pointer. I love pointing fingers. Like, I'm that guy that has to find out whose fault this is, and then we got to get to the bottom of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm still stuck on China. Like I'm still back there. Like, every time people start freaking out and going, Doug Ford's fault, Chris Guy's making people sick, all these people suck, schools are, I'm like, I go back to China every single time. Yes, but if China hadn't released this virus, we wouldn't be here. But I was watching Doug Ford this morning, and I don't know if you know about Ontario's situation. It's like DEFCON 6 here. We had 80 people die today. Yeah, and this guy shut down all the golf courses, but he kept all the businesses open. He had a couple ex-staffers working at Walmart being lobbyists, so Walmart was open during this whole thing. Just skullduggery, right? Like, I know that this doesn't exist in every province, but it exists in every province, and we're getting to see it now that we've got modeling where, like, our fucking hospitals are full. We're packed. We're taking people from ICUs and sending them up north. A 3-hour drive in a fucking ambulance because they don't have the ability to actually deal with these people. So this guy
you're also getting frontline workers from other provinces now too, Dean. Right? Like Alberta,
the Yukon. We had some people fly down from the Yukon the other day, like 100 nurses and a few doctors. Like, we'll fucking help, big time. We'll help. Anyway, so this is this morning, and I wanted to play this for you because I think these are just hillbilly tears, if you ask me. But he had a good cry this morning. I wanted to play this for you and get everybody.
Hold on, folks. I apologize. Hold the hand of their mom or dad as they passed away because of COVID-19 restrictions in hospitals. Healthcare workers who've been pushed to the absolute limit, working to save lives. I want you to know that I hear you. I understand you're going through. I understand your frustration. This experience, this pandemic, is something that has affected every single person.
I think it just stopped.
Yeah. You get either that, right? That was the most dramatic pause ever by a poll.
No, I know. So we're not supposed to like
part
him,
of me.
But,
part of me felt sorry for him, right? Like, part of me is like,
who wants this position during this time? Like, seriously.
Yeah, but Adam, he did this. Like, you know, of all the provinces across this country, no one's this bad. Nobody.
Now that I saw it a second time, it didn't look real anymore. You remember when the right really slayed? I'm not saying it was right to do it, but remember when they slayed Obama because he was dabbing tears that didn't exist? I didn't see no tears there. You know, he didn't try to dab him at least, but there were none. You know, so he got choked up. He got a little verklempt. Who fucking cares? He deserves to be a little verklempt.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't give a shit. And you had so many people today go, "Oh, look, the tears. He's got to be sad, right?" Like, he's got. And I'm like, no, he fucking did this. You know, because you go back to what he's.
Take that out of it, though, Dean. He might have a human bone in his body, and maybe he is a little fucking stressed out, right?
But that's not relevant.
Well, I know he's stressed out, and he may have a human bone in his body, And I'm sure he does. Like, you either found that charming or you got sick by it. Like those are the only two options there when you came to watching it. But as someone that's going through this, and I know we got another 6 weeks of this, my kids have struggled mightily. I've had to help them with school, which is a fucking disaster. I don't know anything about grade 10 math, so don't ask me about grade 10 math. It's caused all kinds of infighting. It's caused death. It's caused destruction. It's caused all these things. And I know the left loves those words, death, destruction, all that shit, but it's the truth, right? So like you talk about, whose fault is it? I lay a lot of the blame at his feet. I lay some of the blame at Trudeau's feet, and I lay some of the blame at anti-Maxer's feet. But at the same time, the one thing that I can't get out of my head is why have we not fucking figured this out? All the G7 nations, we're probably the smartest, right?
You bring up with Dean. Look, I had a green card to the United States. I surrendered it to move to Canada and live here and raise my family here. And the way Canada has handled this across the board is atrocious. It is embarrassing for like how proud it is. You learn how bad it is that we've taxed companies out of here, that we don't even manufacture our own vaccines anymore. I realized when I was just trying to order things for my family, like we don't make shit. Like even hockey gear, most of it is like manufactured in China and Mexico, our national sport. There's a few small companies, but like Bauer gets most of their stuff done in China. But like we've taxed the shit out of companies, so none of them are here, right? And then you have a government that is so divided, but that seems to be the world right now. Where we can agree, and like we are horrible at procuring vaccinations, absolutely atrocious, right? And that seems to be the only way. We can get into a whole vaccine argument, but that seems to be the only way that we're getting out of this. When you look at the states that are open, and this was curious about when I listened to Chris's the other day, when they don't like to, like my parents live in Texas. I've been following Texas very closely, and they've been vaccinating like crazy. All my parents down there are vaccinated. A lot of people still wear masks. We were just down there filming. So even though it's wide open, they are doing the elements that we're trying to say will get us out here, right? As much as people don't want to hear that, they're like, no, nobody's wearing masks. Well, we were down there and we went into Papados. Almost everybody was wearing masks. All their staff was wearing a mask. You didn't have to. A lot of restaurants are still doing it. And everybody, my brother's in his early 30s and he was up for a vaccination the following week. So, we've just done, Canada has done a piss poor job from the federal level to the provincial level. It's embarrassing.
How is it possible that every level can fuck it up? Bonzi's in Texas. That would be a question. Like, it's one thing to say Canada's done a terrible job, but they've done a piss poor job at the federal level, shitty job at the provincial level in most provinces, and municipally, I have no idea what's going on. Like I have no idea. None of this is a municipal operation, right? So you got to kind of take them out of this whole thing. Bonzi is in Texas right now. Greg Bond, and he was saying the same thing last week on the podcast, right, Bonzi?
Yeah.
Everybody in Texas is wearing masks because there's community there.
Yeah, everywhere. And a lot of them have had vaccines. Everybody I've talked to has got the vaccine here, but they still wear their masks everywhere you go. You go into a Walmart, any restaurant, anywhere I've been, people got their masks on still to just kind of take care of each other, and that's how it's going down here. And it's working.
So why do we struggle so much then? Like,
I'd like to know, how come Ford gets shit on so much and Trudeau seems to kind of get away with it? I haven't heard anybody slam Trudeau.
Trudeau's biggest mistakes, Bonzi, were made. Trudeau's biggest mistakes were made like at the beginning of the vaccine procurement. But in all honesty, the government has caught up, and it's really the province's distribution problem right now. So the time to criticize Trudeau is still here. Criticize him. There's a lot of other things happening, like the internet censorship bill and things like that.
Now that's where I agree with Chris yesterday. Like, did they actually, like, because I didn't follow it, like, have they really canned him off of Instagram and everything like that? Have they
yeah.
Done. That to me, as a filmmaker, and
you're talking about Chris Sky, right? The guy that we had on the podcast. Yeah, they dummied him off of Instagram, both of his accounts. They took him off
I'm
of
against
Telegram.
I'm big time against that, because that's crazy, because that becomes a very slippery slope when you're talking
So
about,
what do you say to people during a pandemic then that are furthering information where it's dangerous? Like he's going around telling people there's really no pandemic to speak of and COVID's fine and everybody's going to be cool.
You got to hope that people have a brain on their heads to make a decision for themselves.
I mean, I think you have to, like, some things we have to take accountability for ourselves, but as soon as you start putting parameters to where, like, this is allowed and this isn't, that gets very tough, because when does it stop? So the other day, you saw with it, I just got caught up in it today, and I don't know all the details, but there was that there was a young black lady that was rushing someone with a knife, and the cop shot her down. And then LeBron James posted on his stuff, he posted a photo of the cop, and he said, "You're next," right? And then he took it down immediately. But to me, that's inciting violence. Like,
hold on a second. That tweet, he was saying, it said, "You're next," and then underneath it said accountability, and the context was the Chauvin conviction. And I know it got like misinterpreted by a lot of people, and that's why he took it down eventually. But for all intents and purposes, that was the intent of the tweet, that you're next, because he was right after the verdict, right? And so
I understand all that, but when you're putting somebody's private information up there without it going through due process and everything else, that is the same as what Chris is doing. That's just he's on the other side.
Well, and then the other issue that I have with silencing people online, I mean, obviously there are situations where if you're inciting violence or people are, have the potential to be hurt because of what you're putting out there, like the Trump thing makes sense to me. I still think I was still very leery about it, because all it does is just inflame that side, because they don't go, "Oh shit, I got knocked off of Facebook. I guess I shouldn't have said that about that race." No, they go, "The fuckers are trying to fucking stop me." So all it does is just inflame them and their followers, and it just makes things worse. All you're doing by silencing somebody is you're just fanning the flames. And and again, it's not the number one reason why you shouldn't block these people. I think freedom of speech is the number one thing, but
See, and we were just talking about precedent set in legal courses. So this is where this can get really tricky, because if you have somebody that wants to abuse that and really understands the legal system, and they start hammering you for every little thing that offends them, there will be a lot of precedent set, and then it'll come to the point where you can't say anything, right? Because it'll be boom, no, you under Smith versus Scorgie, you said this, and that's done, and then boom, you're banned. That to me gets scary, as much as I don't like it. And yes, I saw a lot of stuff during the pandemic that was like, holy fuck, this person's, and even people I knew and grew up with, I'm like, they've gone off their rocker, right? But I don't agree with just banning them. I think that gets really, like I said, it almost then it makes them think that they were on to something factual and you're trying to silence them. And, this is interesting for someone that when we did our marijuana films, which I just did a podcast the other day saying, man, watching those now, he's like, everything you said has now come true. And it was just like, boom, you guys laid it in this really entertaining, factual way. But at the time, cannabis was so taboo when we did that, when that film released in 2007, a lot of people are like, man, you're very conspiratorial. You're putting a lot of like, would that be considered? Where people are like, no, you're putting out false information about marijuana, which ended up all being correct. But at the time, if somebody disagrees with it because they have the knee-jerk reaction of no drugs is the only policy, it gets scary.
Yeah. Right? As someone who really does believe there's a pandemic and values science and fact and non-biased fact-based information, I go to source material. I don't read the news written by other people. I want scientists to tell me what's going on. Yeah. There is a sliver of me, Adam, that goes, what if some of these crazy fuckers are right?
Yeah. Of course, all this and like any good theory that gets people on, there is elements of truth, right? Like, because here's and this is where I think, again, like going back, just if governments and people would just be honest, like, because you had what's our Mina Tam, our health,
Teresa Tam,
Teresa Tam,
both her and Fauci.
Nice to see that you really paid attention to her.
Yeah, name. Whatever. Because I'm like you, I like as a doc guy. Even when I get sent these things, I'm like, oh my God, look, it comes from this link. I'll actually manually punch in the link, and 9 times out of 10, there's nothing there. And I'm like, guys, like seriously, do a little. But everyone's so emotional, and it's an interesting time because when it first started, like nothing was on TV, right? Sports were canceled. So where was everybody going? They're going to their internet. And then we find out how much the internet hoodwinks you, right? Because the algorithms are created to get you to fight. They're like a lottery system. They know exactly what's going to get you to pull back, what's exactly paying. Like, it's like, I knew that they had a little bit of knowledge like that, but I couldn't believe how, sophisticated they were when I watched The Social Dilemma. I was like, oh my God. I was like, holy, do they have you in a hole? And that's what always, like, the microchip and the vaccine thing was always the most hilarious thing to me, because the little bit I knew about the internet, having worked with social media since before it was a regular business tool in 2006, is that I'm like, man, if you're using a credit card and you're on social media and you have a computer and a smartphone, there is no reason for them to track you. They already know your every fucking
They know
move.
everything.
They know your fucking porn habits. They know your spending habits. They know my phone is so smart.
Hold on. They know my porn habits?
Oh, yeah.
You're in a bubble lock.
Son of a bitch.
So they're going to know how freaky you really are, Locke. So
And because you,
One of the-
because
you
you
talk
use
about-
your
talk
phone
about-
to watch the porn, Lachlan, they also have the footage. Just to let you know.
Yeah, they know what you're doing. They can heat map.
Yeah.
I've been because of what we do. Our back end is pretty robust. So we actually we have recordings of people moving their mouse over the screen when they're on the website.
Yeah.
We don't know who they are, but we can literally track what people are by watching them in real time. Like I can turn on parts of our back end.
They are so clever on there, Dean. They can they can see with your camera where in the photo you're looking, how long you're on the photo for. Even if you never comment, they know exactly which ones you're scrolling through and reading through. They know, like,
Jesus Christ.
You already have the smartest, most sophisticated microchip that has ever been invented right here, and you gladly pay thousands of dollars to have it and have it track everything. And people say, "Oh, I turn off this." Doesn't matter. It has it all. It knows all. My phone is so smart that when I go down the stairs from my office, it knows I'm going to pick up my kids because it's a regular time. It'll literally
gives you a time how long it's going to take for you to get to the
tells
school.
me how long and which roads are better. And I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't even put a GPS or nothing. Like,
how do you know where I'm going?
Yeah, it knows.
Okay, I got a quick story about that, which is kind of funny because Adam has kids. I have kids. We have busy lives, right? Grant one day admitted to us, who's single guy, and this is before the pandemic, that every time he gets in his car, his phone tells him how far away the Provincial is, which is his favorite bar. You're 12 minutes away from the Provincial.
You know,
from day one with the Bill Gates microchip thing, I was kind of like, man, you're literally texting this on your phone or on your computer, which already has your patterns down more than any microchip could ever. And if you think about the science, this just means that I'm like, okay, do you understand what kind of battery would have to be in a nanochip to allow it to track you for years? It's microscopic in a liquid that can be injected to your body. I'm like, maybe the military has some batteries that could do that right now, but fuck, almost every other thing that we put into the human body that's that small, it don't last for shit. So I was like, that one never got, I was like, that makes no sense. Why would they spend, that would cost trillions of dollars to invent these things and get them. I'm like, that way too complicated.
What about that?
There's so many people that just hate Bill Gates, and that's the one thing that I keep bringing up. We bring it up on the show all the time. Why Bill Gates? Like, what is it about him? Take the microchip out of it. Every time we mention that guy's name, we get 4 or 5 people that text us right away going, "He's the devil." And they're sold on the fact that he is some kind of like.
I think
because he's invested in vaccines. That's why. It's because he's
why aren't they saying the same shit about Dolly Parton?
It's because he's bankrolled big vaccine projects around the world, and I think whenever there's been like an unfortunate side effect in a very small amount of people, I think they this is what I was saying in the last podcast. I think Adam was touching on it perfectly, which was that the idea is that there's the grand idea, the grand conspiracy is the new world order, one world government. And then anything that happens, they attach it to that by taking a great leap of logic and then just pasting it onto that grand idea. But that blank space is where you're supposed to prove your extraordinary claims, and they never do.
Somebody brought that up. He's a globalist. They brought that up, and apparently that just means that's
one of the keywords. If there was a conspiracy theorist word cloud, the globalist thing would be right in the middle and be very big.
It's interesting how that he shifted to be the devil, because when we were doing the pot docs, the devil was the Koch brothers and Soros, which are still considered the devil, but all of a sudden Gates has taken over that one. Has been and it's interesting a little bit, like, again, because I was kind of like, where is that? And especially early on with the QAnon stuff that went, like, I was like, what is this that's going on? And like you saw certain people they enabled, like, a few celebrities got rid of their comments and stuff because it was thousands of just people saying QAnon, Andercombe, like it was. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I always thought it was like from the beginning, I was like, it's interesting how everyone that's on this flight list that QAnon, everyone is going, I'm like, they're all Democrats. I'm like, so there's no crooked people on the right side? Like, it's like,
well, back to what
weird to me that they're all one political party that's the devil, and the other
was
one.
the Pizzagate documentary that started a lot of that, I think, wasn't it? Like, as soon as Pizzagate came out, I had someone send that to me last year during the pandemic. They were like, I thought this was batshit at first, but look how many times they say hot dogs and pizza. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I know.
Like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. What's
Pizzagate? Like the QAnon theory was that the pizza, like they were hiding out, like Hillary Clinton was raping and eating kids in the bottom of a Comet pizza
in a pizza place.
Which turned out strangely
and
not to be true.
QAnon people kept saying, waiting for the show to start, the popcorn, that when when he won, he didn't really win, and Trump was really getting the troops, and they were going to take over.
August, Adam.
It's August now. It was
like
like January 20th and March 4th and March 23rd.
No,
and
it's
then
August 20th, I think.
It's August? Okay.
It's like, but there's a part of me that respects that hustle. I'm like, damn. I'm like, they're so good. And like, their predictions can totally not come true. There can be one thing. Like he says one word. They're like, no, but he said that word in his speech. That means everything's on track. And I'm like,
all of a sudden it's the Bible code.
But 99 other things were wrong. Dates, like people weren't like, but it was fascinating to me. But like, why are people attaching themselves to even people I know? Like, and I'm like, because like, and unfortunately, I don't mean to insult any of them, but like, it really did seem that, you know, when I watched a lot of the people that really got onto it, a lot of them are the people that don't really seem to have a lot. They're not crushing their dreams, right? Because people that are crushing their dreams are crushing their dreams. They're too busy to get, because at the end of the day, as shitty as tuna, even if it was real or the pandemic or a scam, whatever you want, like, honestly, I'm too fucking busy to really worry about it. Like, I am trying to raise my kids. I'm trying to get my next movies made. Things are going, like, I really don't have time to invest myself in something that doesn't affect me in my everyday life. And that's even a few of my friends would get caught up. I'm like, dude, if you're really worried about what's going on in politics, get involved in your local level, provincial level, because you can actually make change. You can get things seen. You can get, I think in the film industry here in Alberta, they actually call me for like, hey, Adam, how can we make the tax credits and stuff better? How could we implement, like, we can actually make a push there. Worrying about who runs the country and who the president of the United States, I have no effect on that. And
we had about a month or so
too, worrying about like the people that are saying what they're saying, right? Like, I think that there's a premium on stopping people from talking. Stop that guy from passing it. Listen, if you didn't give a fuck about, that's why I have Chris Sky on from time to time. He sent me an email yesterday going, hey man, thanks for everything. Can't wait to come back. I'm like, fuck, that's unbelievable. And I'm like, he's entertaining to me because my eyes are not on that prize. My eyes are on, how can I be a happy individual? How can I make my life go forward? How can I do things that benefit me and the people that are around me? And how can I be a human? That's it. Yeah. And so what happens is that pisses people off even more, especially on the right. I've noticed the people on the left, like the woke dicks, who I also think should go fuck themselves. Those people don't annoy me as much because I identify with parts of their messaging. But I got this morning, just in case you were wondering if I'll give you a couple. I got this today. This was a message sent to us in our comment section. Bean Blundell, you guys deserves 3 things. 2 in the chest, 1 in the head, preferably of the cheapest metal available on the market to save extra cost. Totally not worth it in your case. Yes, I am talking of bullets, and if I was in your country, I'd take care of it myself, you pathetic, moronic, useful idiot. I thought that was nice. I hadn't been threatened to be shot in years, so it was cool. Yeah, and then I got this, you communist piece of shit. Thank you for bringing Chris Sky on and giving him more exposure. You and your Bolshevist friends made fools out of yourselves, but we all know anyone who's somebody in your industry has sold their souls, man. Anyway, thanks again. Good luck with the DNA altering vaccines. By the way, blockchain and decentralization will end up killing weak content platforms like yours. All the best, Klaus Schwab. I doubt he meant all the best. Like the all the best to me was like a throwaway comment. We've created, this whole thing is created extremists who are willing to just send me a text and go, I'm gonna fucking shoot you if I see you.
They were always there.
I highly recommend, if you guys haven't listened to it, I'm a big podcast listener when I'm in my car, so I listen to it. I think it's called Down the Rabbit or The Rabbit Hole by the New York Times, and it follows people that got caught up in these algorithms. And you can see, and I witnessed this organically when I originally just saw the pandemic hit and everybody was online, and I was still doing stuff for my films and stuff like that. And I noticed the shift happen without understanding how like complicated the algorithms are. I just noticed, I'm like, wow, man, everyone's so tense and fighting and wake up and this, and like one side, I was like, I really noticed it. And then watching The Social Dilemma, I was like, well, these things will totally go to where you want to see, and it'll only provide information you want or just enough argument to keep you engaged, because the algorithm doesn't pick or choose sides. It only wants your maximum attention to the platform that it's serving. So it'll just it'll create so this podcast, the New York Times one, really, it follows some people that open up and talk about how it started with one YouTube video, which then recommended another one. And it has the creators that did that. And they start talking about like how they got scared. The creators quit because they're like, man, this isn't what we thought it was going to do. Like they showed, there's one guy that was on a train. He's in France, I think. And the guy was watching, and he was like, oh yeah, he's like, look at this. And it was some conspiracy theory. And he was like, wow, he's like, I really don't like that that's on there. And then the guy was like, he's like, you know, he's like, unfortunately, I helped create that. And he's like, yeah, but the problem is if you take that down, there's 10 other suggestions just like it. Like it's that algorithm feeds them right to you. So you constantly keep going from one to the other.
Can I give you a sample?
Yeah.
Can I give you a sample of that?
Yeah,
Can I give you a sample of a story that I got? The same thing. This was sent to a friend of mine who's balls deep in it. So the algorithms that are targeting him are targeting the things that he likes, right? And he likes these things. And so because they know that, and he thinks that this is news. I'll put this up for you. This looks very familiar. See how it says the Drudge Report, or it's supposed to? Like if you don't look, if you don't really examine, this is the Canadian report.
Yeah.
And it's being passed off as fucking news from the LPC leaker at prontomail.com. And it talks about the secondary lockdown phase, what's really happening with the prime minister, the great reset, projected mutations, all that. And someone sent this my friend sent this to me, and he's like, you got to read this. It's from the Drudge Report. I said, no, it's not, you fucking idiot. It says the Canadian Report, and some dickhole in his basement put this up, and it went viral, and he probably paid for it to go viral. But that's how this thing perpetuates itself, is it not?
Yeah, no, I would. Well, and then on top of it, you have the algorithms that really know where, like when it talked about how you and I search the same thing and we're in different, like it will pull up different results because it knows what we want. It knows what we just watched, and it knows what we're looking for, right? Like that was the part that freaked me out the most in the social. I was like,
I have a question, Adam, because you've been doing at this for a long time. I remember being glued to the internet after 9/11 happened and seeing sort of like what I was going to use the word organic to describe that, an organic version of the way that like certain information can spread, like loose change. And even before that, what was that called? The zeitgeist or whatever? Like everybody loved that. And it kind of fed Occupy Wall Street, it seemed at the time. And then the truther movement with 9/11. This is before social media. So you might not know the answer to this, but I'm just sort of curious if do you think like the experts sort of like studied that a little bit to see how they could program the algorithm to want to meet people's tastes? Like
100%. I mean, they're getting like, that's the thing when you watch that, again, I hate to keep referencing that doc over and over and over again, but that's the thing is you realize how well it dissects. Like, so definitely they've studied that now, and they've looked at past things and yellow journalism in the past. Like we talked about, it's weird because a lot of the stuff we talked about in the union, the call, we talked about media really manipulating it back in 2014 when the Cult Tribe released, and we showed how like the same broadcasters from all over will use the same opening, right? And it'll be like, and this and this, and like we showed like they're doing the same feeds, they're feeding the same thing. So this was before the algorithms and stuff had really kicked in. So definitely they've studied it. And again, that's where there's elements of truth, and you'll hear people talk about that. Like, see, I can't remember where every movie and everything is.
Well, you're the reason why people think I'm brainwashing everybody.
Yeah, we've been getting you from our first documentary. Keep watching, locking in. All my docs always get better, no matter, even if they're not, they're better, because that's how we manipulate each one. Right? So,
are you going to do a doc about this?
Like the last one, you buy it, you rent it, you buy the poster, you buy every shit we throw at you, right? Because you need it all, otherwise you don't get the full experience.
I can't wait to get my Danny Trejo bandana from you. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Is I'm looking for inmate number one. Trejo.
Those are very special, and they're limited, and we got to put them through the. So yeah, they're like, we're going to do an NFT of them, so they're like worth thousands of dollars. Yeah.
There's a question. and it's a really simple question. Do you think we're going to be at a point in the next several months when we're on top of this, we've vaccinated our way out of it, information starts coming around, it's a little bit of government overreach, and it's a lot of science? Do you think that certain groups will fucking back down? Because when most people are faced with truth, they go double the other way, right?
Yeah,
it's traditionally what they do, and the reason why they go the other way is because they don't want to fucking feel embarrassed.
Yeah,
and I'm really interested in two things. Are you going to do a movie about this? Because I find it fucking fascinating. not just like how did COVID get here, but the tribal divisions that have turned into life or death for a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
So that's one question. And two, how the fuck do we get out of this? And will any of these people go, you know what, bottoms up, I get it, I was wrong?
That is the part that scares me, and that's the part where I agree with people on both sides. And some of the stuff with Chris is like, you get scared when you constantly give up rights and freedoms under the guise of safety, right? Like, when does that become like when someone's like, we have to be able to assume some of our own risk, right? Like, at what point, are we allowed to not wear masks anymore and won't be shamed? And like, not that I'm a Ted Cruz fan, but you saw that the one day when he was getting interviewed, and the media guy's like, can you put on your mask, please? And he's like, actually, I'm about to present over the microphone. We always take our masks off. Plus I'm vaccinated. And he's like, well, I would feel more comfortable. And he's like, well, you can leave then. You don't need to be here. Like, yeah. I don't like Ted Cruz at all. But at that point, I'm with him. I'm like, yeah, like, dude, if you're that, like, he's been vaccinated. They always take their thing off. You can't talk with a fucking mask on. Like, I don't know, man. That's a part that scares me, is that it's come so tense on both sides. Like, when is it going to be okay? Or is people
and nobody's hearing when we're agreeing like that. I kept looking at Chris Sky when he had his talking points the other day, and he was just like, and anytime that he said something that we agreed with, I would go, hold on, but you're on a podcast right now with people that agree with that point. Stop. And he didn't know how to. That didn't compute with him.
He'd get angrier.
He just got. What do you mean?
Just would pivot to another bullet point.
Yes, and then he would stop and he would flinch and go, "This wasn't how I imagined things to be." Just because I'm wearing a mask or I'm following the rules doesn't mean that I agree with everything that's fucking happening.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And that's the problem that we're in right now, is that everybody's got these sides, right? And everybody's sort of on one side or the other, and
each side's praying they're right at the end of this too.
Yes, but it's not even praying that they're right. Who gives a fuck who's right?
The left are all
nobody
atheists.
Can have
don't pray anyways.
That's the part with either side. Anybody that says that they're like because, and this is where I think everyone, and what I meant to go with Theresa Tam and Fauci is, both of them lied to the public about masks because we were worried about supply, right? And they said, you don't really need masks, right? Because they were worried about first respond, and that backfired like fucking crazy, because then people are like, look, they themselves said you don't need them. Where if they would have just been fucking honest, be like, guys, please don't rush out and go get them. We need them for the people that are going to deal with the sick. I think with people now, we are, I hesitate to say this, a bit smarter. And I mean a little bit, just because we have access to information in a way that's so fucking easy now.
I'm wondering if we're smarter or not. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think we're dumb, but maybe we have access to, but being honest, like, I think that's even why podcasts have taken off, is they're much more honest conversations than the bullshit we constantly see on TV, right? Just constant bullshit.
But the crazy thing about the podcast thing is, do you know how many people have come after me about a lot? I mean, it's not even my fucking podcast. I can't fucking believe you put Chris Sky on. Like, I mean, like, what do you mean you can't believe that guy has something to say? You don't have to agree with him. And by fucking shutting him out, you're doing more damage. Right?
And I do agree.
We had someone email last week because we announced we were going to have Maxime Bernier on, who's the head of the People's Party of Canada. And James, you saw the tweet that I sent back. Guys like, well, fuck, I'm not going to listen. You just lost a follower. And I'm like, well, stay ignorant, dickhead. Like, like that's kind of that's the world that everybody else lives in, where
I think James
got to pick a side, and at the end of it, you hope you're the last person standing, as opposed to, why don't we do some critical thinking? Why don't we ask some questions? Why don't we go to the other side and figure it out? Why don't we try to bring everybody in the middle? And listen, that's not my job. My job isn't to bring people in the middle. My job is to have I think, responsible conversations about this with people from all walks of life. So, and to make it somewhat entertaining, it's not that difficult for me.
Well, that's why the left pisses me off so much in this whole thing, because and I'll use that example that I used. I commented with someone on Facebook this morning who was saying that why would you have him on and this and that, and I reminded this person and everybody who was reading it that in 2005, or I think it was around 2005, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, I got that right, I think.
Good for you.
The former
Good for
Iranian,
you.
Thank you. The former Iranian president went to Columbia University, which is like a left-wing bastion, place for liberals, right? And they invited him to speak. At the time, he wasn't just considered dangerous by the far right. Like he was saying some shit, to a domestic audience that was really violent, right? And he was saying other things at the UN. He was double speaking and all that stuff. But they let him speak because it's not about not having the guy there. It's about hearing ideas and then deciding if you find them repugnant or if you support it. And nowadays, it's like the same left, are now saying, well, you shouldn't even invite him to speak to find out what his ideas are. And it's just like,
he'd never speak now. Like just the fact that he could speak then in 2005. Guy was a dictator, prime minister of a dictator, religious dictatorship. And Jordan Peterson isn't allowed to speak at a fucking university.
Yeah,
right.
I know.
We're more afraid of Ann Coulter than Saudi despots and things like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson's one that's really interesting to me, where like I've listened to him on Joe Rogan's podcast left. I don't know all
Your
the
pizza
details.
pop is ready, Bonzi.
That's not mine.
You listen to Peterson on the Rogan podcast?
Yeah, man, and his daughter too. And like I remember, like I didn't know there's all this controversy around him. Like I just saw, like I was like, wow. I was like, man, what a great, intelligent speaker. And then I saw these people that like just hated him, wanted like I was like, whoa. I'm like, what happened? And then I found out like what happened at the university. And I don't know. There's a lot of things that he says, and he sound like, again, on Joe Rogan's platform where he has all the time and he can speak, and it's a long form, and you can get the nuances of where he came from and where his argument, like. I was like, man, how are you not on this guy's side? But then, I see other media, like there's even that one interview where the girl keeps trying to say, so what you're saying is, and he's like, no, that's not what I said at all. What I said was this. And he keeps to the point where and she literally gets stumped and he goes, gotcha. Right. Like she was trying to throw him off with like, and he dodged it like a Shaolin monk where he's like, so what you're saying? He's like, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. You're trying to make another analogy to pull me down this road.
Yeah.
This is what I said. This is what I meant. You're trying to defer to this because you don't like one comment here and you're trying to manipulate it into something else. And like, I don't think she was used to, she was like, she didn't even know what to.
That's why he makes people so angry, is because he's so smart. I mean, he doesn't actually let people get him off point. No. This is my point. And you need to understand why this is my point.
He's not always right either, right? Like that's the thing. Like for some reason we seem to be operating as if we're expecting people to that we hold in high regard to be right all the time. Like that's the cult following that people talk about. But it's okay if you think he's wrong, right? I interviewed Jordan Peterson before he was really famous. It was after the thing that happened at the school, so he was controversial in Canada, but he was relatively unknown. Like this is before Joe Rogan and all that. I still get messages from people telling me that I gave a platform to like an admitted misogynist and a transphobic person and all this kind of stuff. I don't think he's that. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with a whole bunch of shit he says, but like he's still interesting to talk to. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's and this is again why you bring up a great point there. And if you look at like the number one podcast in the world right now is Joe Rogan, and I think that's why I've always liked him, is he's brought on people that from all walks, and he's got criticized on both sides. Why'd you bring this person on from the left? Why'd you bring on? And he's just a fascinated guy that wants to hear. And for me, I can't tell you how many times there would be a guest and I would tune in and be like, oh, I can't stand this person. I want to. And then after listening to them in an organic situation talk for 2.5 hours, I'd be like, wow, I have a whole new respect for that person. I liked it.
Yeah.
Like, wow, they brought us some great points. And then other people that I really liked and admired, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this one. I was like, actually, this person's really boring and not that interesting outside of like, it was like,
yeah, but
wow.
we've become preventative, right? Like just because there are certain tribes, groups that don't want other people to listen to things that they don't like according to, their religious upbringing, their character, whatever. And they're preventing everybody else from being educated by those point of view or discovering different points of view, whether or not you agree with them or not. And James likes to say this all the time, and I fucking agree with him. I didn't used to, but I do. Marketplace of ideas. What the fuck happened to that? Yeah. Like, what the fuck happened to a conversation? People would go to universities, and they've been doing it for hundreds of years, to bring new ideas, to talk about philosophy, to talk about a way to conduct yourself, to talk about truths and lies, drugs. And to talk about policy, talk about drugs, to talk about all kinds of stuff. But now what we've done is we've empowered these people that are on the left, and I fucking hate, here's a quick aside. If you have right or left in your Twitter bio, you're a fucking loser, an absolute loser. And I'll tell you why.
What about freedom fighter? I was thinking of changing
total
mine
fucking
to
loser.
freedom
Total
fighter.
fucking loser. I get it.
Okay, I'll keep it the way it is.
Here's why, because none of that is merit based, right? Like what we're doing is we're talking about having a merit based conversation based on facts. So we'll lean into the right, we'll lean into the left, we'll have a conversation, and we'll try and figure it out so that after we're done this conversation, we can be learned or a little more learned than we were before we came into the conversation. Yeah. The people on the left don't want to have the conversation at all. At all. And that's the part that fucking drives me crazy. That's why I'm with you. I fucking hate the left way more than I hate the alt-right. And I hate them both.
But this also goes back to the freedom of speech thing we talked about earlier, where it's just not good to block, like, because it becomes a slippery slope where, like, you can't just say, I don't want to hear any of it. Like, you have to. Yeah. Like, I've been on, like, interesting both sides, because the cannabis thing was so taboo when we were researching it in 2004, so taboo to bring up that it had any medical benefits. You were a batshit crazy propagandist, right? Like,
did you have like an aha moment when you were doing the doc? Like, did you, because obviously we all grew up at the same time frame where it was terrible.
But David, I think that's why I was just talking about this on a podcast, why it's become such, like, literally in cannabis museums now, it's literally considered like a piece of history, because in the cannabis movement, a lot of people say that was the film that put it into one, really cohesive, way to explain all the arguments that you heard through the years.
The culture high.
Yeah, no, that was the follow-up. So the first
Union,
the business behind getting high. The culture high was the follow-up, where we go into the internet. We started talking about, before algorithms and stuff, before we even understood them, just how the internet changed the game for arguments. Because back in the Union day, if you wanted to find medicals, you literally had to go to, like, okay, what universities are in town? Have they done any, like, clinical university trials? Can I pull it from the archives or go to the public library? Like, it was really hard to get that information. Right now, it's become public domain. It's online. But my point was with that is that, when we made that, like, a lot of people at first, when it was coming out, they were like, man, that's crazy. And I was like, but all the studies, they're in the back. We quote them in the film. They're on our website. Go read the Ledane Commission. Go read the Wood-Wheaton report. Go read the Nixon report. Go read those things. Like, we read them, actually, and I hate reading. But
did you read the COINTEL report?
The which one?
COINTEL?
No.
No, you didn't. No, and see, again, it goes back to conspiracy theories. There's a conspiracy theory that back in the day, the government gave all the black people weed so they could arrest them all.
Yeah.
That was the COINTEL report. Yeah.
Well, there was definitely, like, if we talk about the Union, there's definitely financial interests that are, and that's happening now, right? Like, businesses that are going to profit off of the current restrictions because they're geared to, or they were cash strong, or, I mean, shoot, my dad worked for a major corporation for a long time, and like, it was an oil company. When other oil company, like when a set of brothers had expanded their business because things were rolling, but then oil took the turn for the worse, the big companies would come in and be like, we'll give you pennies on the dollar, but we'll bail you out. Right? We know your company would have had $100 million valuation 6 months ago, but it's worth 10. We'll give you the 10 because we're cash strong. Right? So a lot of businesses are doing that now. And it's not always that I agree with it, but it's not always some nefarious overlord saying, like, ooh, how can I continue?
Yeah.
But I say there isn't a few of those that are doing that. There are definitely businesses that
it's not the Bilderberg group. It's not the Gettys and the Rothschilds.
Well, I'm sure they're all like, look, the rich get richer because they're invested in everything. And when there's a downturn, and look, I'm not that I'm rich, I'm far from it. I make fucking documentary movies, but listening a little bit, paying a little bit attention to my financial advisor, right? Like, as I have long-term investments, I don't do any fast, like, where I'm like, oh, I'm put in and hopefully it flips. But if you look at the stock market over the course of 20 years, right, it's always, even if it has dips, it's always going like this in a slow, gradual thing. So I put like monthly things into large, like to investments that I plan to like give to my kids or for retirement. And right when the pandemic hit and the stock market dropped, I called him and said, double all my stuff from all my, and he was like, oh, you actually paid attention. And sure enough, after the 1 year, like I had the biggest growth, like we'd gone up like 44% on one, 56 on another, because that just is the way things go. There's always rises and falls, but over the long haul, it will go up. And
so you're buying.
I was. Now I'm kind of staying. I'm kind of waiting because I don't know this. I like Dean. You just said 6 weeks. We hope to sell. Like, man, I don't know. Like that part, I do kind of agree with. Like we were told 2 weeks to flatten the curve a year and a half ago, and it looks like Canada's at its worst ever at this point, right?
Yeah. Is the 2 weeks up?
Yeah, the 2 weeks is a little over.
Hey, I mentioned quickly, and this sort of loosely ties into the conversation you were having, Adam, about the business and whatnot. And I thought it might be interesting. If you get a chance, you'll have to watch that Sasquatch doc. I mentioned it on Facebook, and they talk a little bit. It's not an underlying sort of, it's the underlying theme of the thing. It's not a major sort of focal point of the doc, but they do talk about the weed business, and they're in the Emeralds Triangle down in California, and which I know you know about. Yeah. And there was a couple of comments about the growth of the industry since legalization. They said it's like exponential, and I was surprised by that. I was like, what? And we talked a little bit about it on the air today, but they were a couple of people were trying to explain it to me that obviously the legalization is, and I thought it would kill the black market, but apparently it's done nothing but bolster it up.
Well, in the States, because you're talking about it in the States, right?
It's in the States, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the gray market's pretty hot in Canada right now. Yep. I think it's going to tail off because the cannabis people are now in charge of cannabis businesses. At first, it was just captains.
I was going to say, like, because I'm actually, we actually have union products coming out hopefully this year with it. And it like, I'm sure there's still going to be black markets. They're going to want it, but it is shifting away just because, they're going to have their learning curves when they're starting, right? And now they weren't operating good, and orders were going bad, and a lot of the product out there was shit. But now, like Dean had said, now they've hired a lot of growers that have been in the what they like to call the legacy market for decades, and they're growing great product, and they're getting these are the same guys that were growing. You're
coming out with your own stuff. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Partnering. What are you coming out with?
Yeah, we partnered with a company called Pure Brands in Victoria. Yeah. They've been involved in the legacy market for decades. Making
flour, shatter, resin, live resin. What are you doing?
We're going to start with just vape cartridges. We're not getting into the actual. There'll be union products. We'll be getting into the cartridges, the standard cartridge that everybody's doing. And then we'll change the flavors and resins on that. Because that's the thing is when you're doing an extract, depending on the crop, they do shift a little bit every time, right? Because you can make the flour close, but you can't make it exact every time because it's organic, it changes. But you're getting a lot of the growers coming good, and there is a lot of good product on there, but just the draconian way of getting it into the market through AGLC and everything, that certain products that were branded properly and the marketing dollars were hitting the shelves and they were shit, but you are starting to see the mom and pop ones starting to come in and the better product. And so it will continue to get better. So
good. It's an awesome time.
Adam, if you're ever
people are so fucked up right now too, right? You know what I mean? Like it's a great, no, it is like people want, like if we're doing 2 pens. That will come out in the next 4 months. I was literally picking all the terpenes today for him. Yeah. King Louis the 13th is one of them. The other one's ACDC. I don't want to get into it, but you'll love it. Yeah. So we're doing the same thing, and ours are all solution oriented. Like I've got an AM focus pen that's coming out, and then we've got a PM relaxed. You want to go to bed. Woman's works, and it's funny because now when we talk about pot and we talk about cannabis and we talk about solutions. It feels freeing, right? And to know that you were one of the guys that actually took a documentary up to the House of Commons and said, hey guys, watch this. And they're like, fuck, we'll legalize it. I have you to thank. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, it was actually, I was having a reflective moment on an interview the other day saying, like, I don't know what percentage it did, but I do know when the Liberals invited me several years ago with the director, they said it was because they'd received thousands of emails and letters referencing the union that they finally said, well, we have to have these guys in. Now, let's not get it twisted, because all politicians, they didn't do this out of the goodness of their heart and because they thought it would be best for the country. Right. They did this because they thought this might get us the younger vote, and that might be how we get in. Right.
I was actually sitting, and this is a true story. I was sitting at the table with the president of the Federal Liberals in 2011 when that idea was conceived. And he was called a crackpot by every member of the Liberal executive at the time. And then we lobbied for 6 months quietly, the delegates that were going to the 2012 convention. And I interviewed Justin Trudeau at that convention with a half ounce of the skunkiest weed ever in my lapel pocket. Yeah. And at the time, I think I'm the only guy that ever had him say this on tape. It was that he told me that he didn't think that it was the type of decision, legalization, that society would really embrace and what they need right now, or something like that. And then a year later, I think he announced, or 2 years later.
Well, after we screened both our films there, because we screened first the Union and then the Culture High, it was really interesting to see. And again, I don't say it's directly from the films, but sometimes when you put something out to the zeitgeist, like the arguments from the professionals that we interviewed in the film, we went from when we started the films in 2004, where it was evil and dangerous, gateway drug, you smoke marijuana, you'll be doing heroin, to seeing the arguments, that were presented in the film coming from all these really smart intellectuals and politicians saying, well, actually, the gateway in the illegal market itself, there is a gateway effect, but that actually comes from the black market, because selling you an ounce of weed, you're going to take a long time to smoke that. But if I get you on cocaine or pills or any of the synthetics, you're going to come back more frequently. It's easier to get addicted, and then there's more profit on them, right? So we talked about, like, there is a black market effect, or there is a gateway effect, but that is created by the black market. These were ex-cops and people that had fought it and talked about it, and all these bullet points that were by these great people that we interviewed. You started seeing the shift. I would see people in the interviews and be like, man, there's even one where Norm Stamper, the former police chief of Seattle, says, like, why does it always say that if I start with this, I'm going to end up on this? He's like, it could be said I started on milk and then became an alcoholic. Like, why does one always defer to the other?
That's how it happened for me. That's how it happened for me. I loved milk. I was 5 years ago. I had to quit drinking. Yeah, I had to do it. Bonzi, you're in Texas.
Yes, sir.
How's the gas station weed? Because Scorgie, I don't know if you know this. He's doing the midlife crisis across the United States. Sold everything he owned. He'd be a great doc. Sold everything he owns. He bought like a literal tour bus, like a rock star tour bus, and he's literally going gas station to gas station, buying gas station weed across America, stopping to do some things. Like right now,
but he's a little hesitant about the vaccine.
That's the fucked up part. Is that Bonzi is like, I'll smoke gas station weed and barbecue with guys that I've never met before and get food poisoning, which happened yesterday. But he won't get the vaccine because he's not too sure about it.
The AstraZeneca one. I'm just a little leery right now. Yeah.
I'm a little leery on that too. And it's
I got it. I got it right here like 3 days ago. And the chills yesterday for a bit, but nothing. Feel fine.
Hair on your nipples?
Wiener's significantly larger today.
Whoa, what the fuck? They started with that. Like, Locke, let's go book it today, bud.
You guys, listen, I hate to tell people, but breaking news. The AstraZeneca vaccine makes your wiener bigger.
Yeah. Hey, just put it on a fake thing and put it out there, and it will.
Everybody will get vaccinated. That's good misinformation too. Listen, I did a study on myself. Your wiener grows like 1.5 inches if you get the shot.
Hey, Dean, speaking of misinformation, interesting there. So Mike Baker, who works for the CIA currently, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they broke a story. I haven't dove into it yet, but he was talking about it was fascinating that the Russians have been putting out stuff to sewer the American vaccinations because they have their own Sputnik, right? Which they've already handed out to. So some of the disinformation or some of the information saying how bad the vaccines are and stuff in North America is disinformation from Russia because they wanted to promote their own.
Mm-hmm. But you seen any of that down there, Bonzi? You seen any Russian misinformation or no?
I haven't yet. Not yet, though.
No, it's a shame. It's a shame. I'd wonder too if a guy like Bonzi, and I know we're just kind of sitting here shooting the shit, but a guy like you who's concerned about getting this AstraZeneca vaccine, who's like, what happened? Tell me first of all, don't want to get the AstraZeneca vaccine, but tell me about your last 2 days.
So after we did the podcast Tuesday, I decided I would make dinner for the Mexican guys who will be helping me out because I was supposed to leave yesterday. So after the podcast, I had only a couple beers because I'm really not drinking, and I barbecued up and everything was going great. And it turns out I didn't cook the pork chops enough. The only one to know that was me. The other two Mexicans were smart enough because they were about 10 minutes behind me. They got caught up in something. They're like, oh, because food was ready. So I started to eat. Yeah, but apparently it wasn't. So anyways, it was pretty tasty going down. And fuck, I woke up yesterday morning sicker than hell. I couldn't stay out of the bathroom. And then I talked to the guys today because they didn't hardly see me yesterday at all. And I was like, dude, I think there's something wrong with those pork chops. And he's like, well, yeah, as soon as I cut into mine, it was fucking half raw butt. So I didn't even realize, but he got up and he went and nuked his food, came back, scarfed it all down, and he was fine. Well, I fed the dog one of the pork chops this morning. And when I was cutting into it and stuff, I was like, fuck, there we go. That's the reason I was sick.
Yeah.
Dirty raw pork chops.
Vaccine. Yeah.
In a
You'll
garage.
eat raw pork chops, but you won't get the vaccine.
Well, I didn't really eat raw pork chops on purpose. I won't do it again. But yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about not getting the vaccine yet. I didn't say I was never going to get it. I'm just kind of holding off right now.
You're not alone. You're not alone. There's a lot of people that are
I don't get that.
Concerned about it.
We had I don't know if you clarified, but a vaccine injury. Like my daughter got like almost, you can never totally pinpoint it, but my daughter got Guillain-Barré syndrome and Bell's palsy from the HPV vax. We're pretty, like, studies will say, it can never be proven, but she was really young and she got it pretty bad. Like, actually, like they did a news piece and stuff about her when she did it here. And we only even started to look at that as an option because all our kids are vaccinated and we get the standard vax. But every hospital we went to, that was like the first question they asked. When we went to the Stollery and the specialist couldn't figure out what was going on because they weren't sure if it was muscular dystrophy or if she had a tumor in her brain that was causing her body not to work properly, or that was the first thing they asked. Have you had any vaccinations recently? And I was like, why do you guys keep asking that? Right. And they were like,
we can't tell you.
They were like, well, no, because when you're dealing with autoimmune, right, and you're putting something that is going to trigger your immune system, yes, there are, and like obviously my daughter's an outlier. This isn't like, one in like it, but it can happen, right? So my wife and I have had this serious talks about this. We're like, I'm going to get the vaccine when I can. I'm a little hesitant on the AstraZeneca. I prefer the Pfizer and the Moderna. They have a higher efficacy rate too, which a lot of people don't even understand that efficacy rate. When Chris Sky was on, I wanted to argue and he was like 60%. It doesn't even, I'm like, that's not what the efficacy rate means. What it means is that there's a 60% chance you will not get fatally ill or really ill from it. That's what the efficacy means. Doesn't mean you won't get it. You can still get it. It doesn't block you from getting it. That's the
and it's 100% effective of keeping you alive.
Yes, that's what the efficacy rates mean. There is a great doctor that I've been following his podcast called, his name is stupid. It's ZDoggMD, but he's had all these virologists on. Yeah, I know. He's
good. He's really good though.
Yeah, he's good. But he has.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, and the other guy's name is Doc Cock. He's terrific.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd love him.
But he's had a lot of great virologists on, and really the part I really dug and was listening to his stuff and all this was going on is that he would just explain the data that you're seeing in the media or wherever you're getting these and just interpret it in a way that you understand it. Because we see these percentages, we see these amounts, we don't fully understand what I thought the efficacy meant like, oh, you're 65% blocked from getting it or 90% blocked. That's not what it means. And that's why now you're probably seeing, even though we're vaccinating a lot, you're starting to see this initial uptick is because people forget that you can still get it and transmit it. It just prevents you from winding up in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
So
you can still get it and spread it,
Yeah.
right? Which is the theory behind masking for a lot of people is let's wear a mask because you can get it and give it even if you've been vaccinated.
Yes.
You just won't die or feel like dying when you do get it.
And the interesting thing is,
and that's where the conspiracy theorists get on, where they're kind of like, no, see, the vaccine's giving it to them. And they're sort of like, no, because it's a protein. Like I did, because that part was interesting, is that when you listen to these virologists, they were talking about how state of the art these are, that these really are like, they're saying that they're going to use mRNA stuff for all kinds of other treatments, not just for vaccines, right? That they
and the AstraZeneca is not an NRA.
Oh, it's not?
Right.
Okay.
No.
So there, I didn't know that.
It's the older the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca are the previous technology.
Where they put a dead form of the virus in your body.
Yes, and so then it attacks it and then creates the antibodies. The new I'm not going to try to explain the NRA.
Why not, Locke? I'd love to hear you explain this.
Dr. Locke. I'd rather do cock talk with Locke
Science
than
time with
Dr.
Locke.
Yeah.
Well, from my basic understanding is that they've taken a protein molecule out of there that your immune system then identifies and learns how to fight it. Right. And they've been working on this for decades and they were waiting for something to do it. There's a couple doctors that were on this podcast saying, like, when this new COVID-19 hit, they're like, oh, maybe we'll get a chance to implement our study. And then they're like, no, it's probably going to be like SARS and it's going to fade out. But then when it went global, they were like, boom, now we have a chance to try it.
Yeah.
The world invested more money than it's ever in any other vaccine ever. Because they're like, man, we need to get back on track. Like Israel, that's why they are able to get 90% of because like their prime minister was calling me like, how much? Like, I will pay more than any other country. Get that shit here now.
Yeah, he did. He paid double. He paid double or teens and bought the market out just so that he could flood his own country, right? Which is kind of what I was hoping would happen. That's why Pfizer
told everybody to fuck off, right? Yeah.
But I was hoping that would happen here. Like, and because we've all been kind of living under this umbrella of safety for a long time, thinking that we're Canadian, right? Like, oh, the Canada's the best.
Our leader,
states, everybody's like, I love Canada. Oh yeah, it's so safe, universal healthcare. But it couldn't be farther from the truth, dude. Like, we're a fucking third world country when it comes to dealing with vaccinating.
And that's, people say we haven't, like, that's where Trudeau was an epic failure there. Like, and our leaders are weak. I'm not like, you look at most, like, there isn't any of them that I'm like, man, that guy or that girl, they're gangster. Like, I can't, like, they all suck. I look at them all and I'm just like, oh God,
all of them, fucking idiots, all of them, fucking idiots, wet noodles. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The one guy
Bonzi fucking hates the prime minister. Bonzi, like we could sit and have a conversation. Like, if I called Greg today, I'm like, hey dude, what's up? You'd be like, fucking hate Trudeau. I mean, like, what else is going on today? Fucking Trudeau fucking sucks. All right, man, good to talk to you. Like, he's old school. I think he's more on the right than he is anything else.
For you guys, this question, would you guys, like, I can't stand, I'm so over now and today, like, again, with podcasting and new world of communication and seeing, like, we like these more honest, transparent conversations, or at least I do. I think if somebody actually came up and was just fucking honest all the time, like, I would connect with that so much more. Like, the way Trudeau talks makes me just like, I can't stand, like, when he's like,
oh my God,
now is not the time for travel.
It's mind-numbing.
I can't. I
just about wrecked my fucking TV. I can't fucking stand him. Oh my God.
Sleeves rolled up. I love it when he rolls his sleeves up and he's like,
listen to him.
He's got his pretty little coif.
I'm just
I'd be looking around and going, is anybody else, like, when he started, like, years ago when he started running, I'd be looking around going, what the fuck is anybody else, like, you guys can't be buying this shit.
Why is this guy
lying to us?
Why is this guy talking in the exact same way that he spoke at his father's funeral? It's got to stop. It has to stop.
But who do you have? The only guy I really kind of like is that Pierre Poilievre that just owns the NDP and the Liberals every time he goes up there, where he just goes, yes or no. Did you spend this money and get no return? Yes or no? And then you see them going, they're like, when we are thinking of Canadians, I'm like, oh my God, can you just answer the fucking question? Like, can you just say, I would respect them more if they said, yeah, we made a choice. We made an error. It was a big miscalculation. We're trying to correct it. I'd be like, okay, gangster, you answered that. Good. Move forward. But it frustrates me when I see the way, and I'm like, no wonder anything can get done. None of you guys can answer anything honestly. You go up there and he asks you a deliberate question and you put spin for 10 minutes of like, well, we as Canadians, I'm like, who are these people? And that's
the problem with everybody today that's in politics, is that they're still doing politics. And James and I have talked about this from time to time, and I've tweeted about it, is that we're paying in Ontario, we're paying the tax. This is all I think. We're paying the tax on electing Doug Ford's character to the premiership. When it comes to the federal issues we've had, we're paying the tax on electing that guy. And I've never been more in tune with, why are we not electing character? Why are we electing colors and parties? I've never, ever in my life, and this last year has really solidified the fact that I need to do a better job of choosing the character that I'm voting for, not the party.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had characters. We haven't had people that we've gone,
politics.
Love that guy.
I think it is.
It should.
Yeah, it's going to change it. And again, somebody said this to me. This is not mine, but it's the smartest thing that has ever been spoken to me about politics. In Canada, it might have been you, Dean. In Canada, we do not vote people in, we vote people out. So we get rid of one fucking idiot and we put another fucking idiot in there. And then as soon as we get sick of that fucking asshole, we put another asshole in there. That's why I'm sitting there watching Aaron O'Toole talk and I'm going, dude, we're going to get stuck with this other fucking asshole because no one's going to like you because you're an idiot.
Yes, but you don't want to listen. Like I've been writing about this for a decade about how it's a revolving door between two parties. And that's all it is. I vote the NDP in the last 2 federal elections, not because I think that they're a great party, but because I just want them to have a chance to wreck the family car because they're the only ones that haven't done it yet. Right? I'm tired because it's always
there's something you'll never do, James. Wreck the family car.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's true. I'll be getting a blowjob while sitting in the passenger seat.
Well, and James, sounds like you've been there a lot. Like I only got to go those few times we were screening the movie, and we had the best young guy take us on a tour and really break things down for us. And I remember being like, both me and the director of the Union of Culture, were like, that is how the country is ran. That is fucking terrifying. Because so we're in the caucus where they argue and they do it, right? And yeah, where they spin each other all day. Where we're
with all the green felt chairs. You're talking about that with all the green. Yeah.
I was watching there and just looking at how ridiculous. Like just like going in, not expecting. This is my first time really like watching and paying attention to where you can watch from upstairs. And I remember I leaned over to our guy and I go, "This reminds me of like high school kids arguing over something stupid." And he's like, right? He's like, this is what, and how they all cheer each other like, here. Yes. Like, I was like, this is ridiculous.
The British question period is a lot more entertaining because they have a type of media that will skewer them for not answering questions. But you were mentioning before Pierre Poilievre, you know why he's so good is because he was sitting right beside the prime minister when Thomas Mulcair was doing that exact style during the Senate scandal. And Poilievre would sometimes have to stand into the prime minister's place to answer questions, that prosecutorial style of concise, boiled down questions. And because they're so used to grandstanding the question and the answer, you can't grandstand an answer when someone gives you a question that's straight like that. And it's really, it's compelling in the world of question period, but it's still like kind of compelling to see, you know?
Yeah, well, I just find it entertaining. I don't know. I'd have to read more on his actual, but the other part that was great from our host that brought us there that was fascinating is that, like, because then we were asking, then we went to, there was like an oyster bar thing and we were having an oyster and we were chatting and he's like, yeah, these are the people that run our country. And I was like, it seems like they kind of just seem like regular nerdy people, to be honest. Like if a threat came in here,
well, no, losers.
An oyster bar in the House of Commons? Is that what you just said? There's an oyster bar.
There's like some room in the back. Yeah, there's a bar. Like,
I can't believe that people used to sexually assault pages in the House of Commons. Anyways, get back to the oyster bar in the House of Commons. What's amazing?
There's still a group of people, and they'll probably end up in a rally later on today that think that there's some fucking grand conspiracy behind the scenes. Like if you honestly, and that's
I realized that it was not that. Like I realized that I'm like, these people are, a lot of them are right. So the young guy that had us, he was awesome. He's like, we're like, oh, so you're with the Liberals? He's like, yeah, but I work for the Conservatives and I've worked for the NDP and I've worked for, I'm like, oh, so you bounce all over? He's like, well, we all do. If like somebody no longer works there, right, and we're a junior intern, we go to the party that's hiring because we're working, right? So if somebody's out and then we're like, and I was like, and he's like, I'll give you an example. He's like, I have a bill I'm supposed to read tonight and it was like 1,600 pages. And he's like, and I have to vote on it tomorrow with my constituent. Like I'm told I have to vote this one, right? And we're like, well, what's on it? And he's like, I don't fucking know. I'm not reading it. And I was like, dude, like, and he's like, you think I'm gonna go read that tonight? He's like, man, and like we read the first 2 pages, and it was so boring. Like under the law, like I'm falling asleep by the first 2 sentences. Like even if I read it, I'd have to take a month to fully fucking understand it, right? So he's like, and he's like, these are what come back to haunt us like 10 years down the road. They're like, oh, well, you signed a bill back 10 years ago and you were supporting. He's like, oh, fuck, I didn't even read that thing, right? Like he's like, so, and like me and the director were like, how many times are things signed by like junior members of parliament
that no one's read?
And no one's read, and he was like, all the fucking time.
He's at home smoking a blunt. He is not reading that fucking bill.
No, and especially when you see the language, it's so boring. It's like when you read a legal affidavit in the first paragraph.
They make it boring on purpose, just so people don't want to read it.
You
right?
tune out and you don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's when I was like, wow. So like when people were like, they have orchestrated, I'm like, bullshit, because half the people don't even read it. So how would you orchestrate something that they're all gonna fucking read? There's no way. There's no way.
Adam Scorgie is our guest today. You can get him at Adam Scorgie, SCORG. Is that SEOREG? That's how you can get you.
That's
right?
how it's yeah, because that's how it's pronounced, right? Because it's the otherwise people say Scorgie and it's not pronounced that way. So
yeah, I got it.
Productions.
I got it, but it's Scorgie Productions. What movies are you working on right now? By the way, I just, like I said, watched the Inmate Number 1.
Oh, nice.
The Danny Trejo doc was fucking incredible.
That's a great doc.
I love
really, really good. But what are you working on now?
So we are, we just wrapped, like Bisbing will be releasing worldwide here. That's another fan. I mean, if you're a fan of Rocky, like Bisbing is the real life Rocky. Hey, Locke, without giving the spoilers, like Rocky ain't got shit on what he had to overcome. Like seriously, like he overcame.
I'm not a massive UFC fan. But I knew his story. Anybody who watches the UFC knows Bisbing. Like you know his story, right? But you don't know his story. It was very well done, and he is such a compelling character.
He's so right? like as a filmmaker, you dream for guys like that. Like when we're like when we couldn't use any more UFC footage and stuff for legal reasons and stuff, and we're like, I'm like, I would go to the director. I'm like, just use him. He's so charismatic and witty. Just fucking go to him. He's awesome. Like the camera exude. You can see why now he's actually getting a successful acting career, because out of a lot of the MMA guys, he's got charisma and wit and flair. Like even a few of my friends that got to come and work on set were like, man, I see why he's getting acting gigs. Like you just want to hang out with the guy. He really does have that charisma where you just want to be with him. You want to hang out. Like whenever I go to LA now, I like try. I'm like, Biz, you in town? Like, let's catch up for a beer, because he's fucking awesome to hang out with. He's a good dude,
and he's a great call too. His call on the fights is amazing. I mean,
he's awesome.
Joe's great, but I am not disappointed when Bisbing's on the panel. Right?
No, me too. So I see someone like, the doc is currently available exclusively only in Canada on Super Channel. And then it will be
asking in the chat. So that was good. You hit that.
Yeah. And then it will be available worldwide on like all platforms this fall. I'll announce you. And then we're currently working on Breaking Olympia, where we partnered with $7 Productions, which I mentioned earlier, The Rock. So that's about Phil Heath, 7-time Mr. Olympia, one of the greatest. If there's a Mount Rushmore of bodybuilders, you have Arnold, you have Ronnie Coleman, and then you'd have Lee Haney, and then Phil Heath. They're the most decorated bodybuilders of all time. So that'll be releasing probably early in the new year. And then we just signed the life rights of Dolph Lundgren. Speaking of Rocky, Ivan Drago. So we'll
awesome.
And then we just signed Jordan Tutu to do his documentary. So we'll be starting that in the fall as well. And then we're also doing a 3-parts. We're working on a couple other ones. I probably shouldn't announce yet. I get myself in trouble, but that's what we've got lots on the table right now.
Well, there's one that's already like on your IMDb page. Can I ask you about it, or should it not even?
Oh yeah, anything's on there. Yeah, fire away.
You are doing a documentary on my favorite football player growing up, Jim McMahon, and Bill Murray is in it. Yeah, and that's going to be crazy.
So that doc, I really have to give all the love to our buddy CJ Wallace. He did all the animation lock in the Bisbing doc. He's an amazing artist. So that's his baby. And he brought me on to help produce it with Jim McMahon. So that is another one they're just in the edit right now. I think it'll be done in September. So, but yeah, I haven't got to meet him yet, because I've been with COVID. CJ lives in the States. He's been handling everything down there. We've been producing from up here. So I haven't got to meet Jim McMahon, but heard he's awesome and excited in the doc. And he's so open and genuine about everything he's talking about. So that should be a killer one as well.
Can I ask you one last question? I just want to ask one last question. Just one last question though, because I really have to settle something, because I've known a lot of actresses who have like gone through the gauntlet of movies, and they were always the eye candy. And then I looked on your IMDb page for your acting credits, and it's like Towel Boy on Guiding Light, and it's like masseuse on As the World Turns. And I just wanted to know what it's like to be the male eye candy actor.
Well, that was another lifetime now. I'm an old gray bearded guy that I don't know how much eye candy I am these days. But,
Soft hands, Adam.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at your IMDb here. It's you played a bodyguard in All My Children, guiding light, masseur. As the World Turns, Towel Boy, One Life to Live, Adam, Fido, you played Miss Mills' boyfriend, Slippery Slope. You remember doing the movie Slippery Slope?
Yeah, that was a weird one, an independent film up in upstate New York. We shot. That was an interesting one.
I love it.
This is your title: Guy making out with girl, scene deleted.
Yeah,
Scene deleted.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's the best.
Yeah, that was back in my underwear modeling days when I was Greek Adonis. So like it was very common to go into casting rooms and just say, okay, let's show what you got, because fitness is always like, what do you look now, not what you look like in your comp card, right? Like a great example would be like, hey, Scorge, let's see what you got today. Be like, you probably want me to keep the sweater on, brother. What's up?
Locke, how long have you been out of the underwear modeling industry?
Yeah,
it's been a couple years now. But I've been, you know what? It's there's a seniors tour I'm trying to get on.
Champions tour.
Now, hey, Locke, now the good thing is you can't like dad bod shame or fat shame. So like now our bodies are sexy again. We don't have to be in shape. It's like
I got fucking Kramer's body. I've had it my whole life.
Giddy up.
Dude, I don't even when I get out of the shower, I look away from the mirror. I haven't looked at myself naked for probably 20 years, so I get it.
Really?
So James,
try taking a dump on a bus that's surrounded by 100 mirrors.
No.
You answered the original question, right? Of what's it like to be the eye candy or whatever. So it's I think it's even more interesting for men, at least in New York, because in New York, you're the eye candy. You're not the eye candy for women. Women, it's like the Chris Rock, right? They've been offered dick since they were left. Like the models are around guys that want them all the time. You're really eye candy for all the gay guys in the industry, right? That work the industry. Every photographer that shoots males is gay. They are all the casting directors that cast male models are gay. So it's interesting because you're the eye candy, at least for me, because I'm not gay, for people I'm not attracted to. I would have liked to have been eye candy for actually hot models, but it was never the case.
Did you ever have like a producer be like, now listen, I know you're not gay, Adam, but when you go to this party, I want you to flirt a little with that guy because you might be able to get the role in this. Like, did they ever tell you to do shit like that?
They never tell you, but you know, like, man, I had no problem. I worked for, we joked and called it, we worked for the gay mafia. Me and there was 4 of us that lived.
The gay mafia?
Yeah, that's what we call it. We all lived in Washington Heights, and we had a 2-bedroom because it was expensive as shit back then. So we would loft our beds, right? And we'd have 2 guys in each row, bunk beds. Right. And we were all in the industry. We're all fitness guys. And so all of the industry was like, oh man, we need a reality show there. And we're like, it isn't that interesting. We work out, we eat, we're hardly ever there. We leave. So it was standard for us to go to castings and stuff like that. There was a normal day, like shirts off, tarps off. Let's see your wheels.
Tarps off.
Tarps off. You never had to, pardon the vernacular in the direct question. Never had to suck a dick for a role, did you?
No, never had to do that.
Jesus.
I think that'd be the small town Canadian me growing up around the motorcycle clubs and everything else. That was not. Although I wouldn't say there wasn't a few that tried. There was a few that would try to convince me that they're like no, but you should really try it because we have home field advantage. And I was like, nope, there is no fucking home field advantage. I was like. At hooking up with a girl, I don't care how bad she is in the sack. If she's beautiful, I'm going to enjoy it. I don't care.
Oh, come on, Adam. They're casting for the shirtless bellhop. You can get this.
No, it's not happening.
Now, the worst is when you do suck that dick and the scene gets deleted.
Well, funny, in that scene, actually, when they say guy making out with girl, I had to pretend that me and a girl were on a ski hill in the wintertime, freezing our ass off. I had to take off, I had to wear, you just wear this front. It's almost like a large front to cover but they couldn't see it from behind. Like you see my ass, and I had to pretend.
Yeah, I was always going to ask, when you see guys naked in shows and you don't see the front, there's got to be a sock on your balls or something, right?
I did for that one. I don't know on big sets. I'm sure sometimes they just go, no, screw it, we're going to do it. But I had to pretend that I was screwing my girlfriend in the woods up against a tree, and she had to have her underwear on, but where you couldn't see it. And I'd never met her before. It was super awkward and weird. Both of us were like, hey, like, my name's Adam. She's like, I'm Sarah. Like, it's gonna be really awkward because we're gonna pretend to be like humping each other here soon on a ski hill. We're both freezing our asses off. And the director kept being like, say like you're really into it. Like, we're fucking freezing. And we don't know. Like, it's out in it's ski hill in the winter. And she's up in her back. Like, I was worried about hurting her back on the back of the tree
bark.
Yeah. So I was trying not to like, it was weird. Like, there's several situations where you had to do stuff like that. And I was like, fuck, that is like weird. But
did you get a boner? Be honest.
No, not only in that one, but there has been scenes where, you know, because I took acting classes and stuff too, where I would be put with a partner and gorgeous, right? Where I was like, oh my God, like I was checking her and they're like, oh, you two are going to be partners. Like, oh, cool. You're going to do this Michael Shanley play where you're making out and stuff. I was like, and I brought up with my female teacher. I'm like, hey, like what happens? Like if I start making out and we're really supposed to be into this, like we're madly in love and we're like groping.
I'm getting a boner.
I'm going to get excited. And then they're like, oh, well, you have to work this out with your partner, what you're both comfortable with. And that actually, as simple as that sounds, that was the easiest way, is rather than figuring out, you would talk to your partner and say, hey, tell me the ground level right now. And some of the more experienced actresses I worked with, they had this dialed in where they're like, okay, you can grab my chest, you can grab my ass, you don't go in my pants, you can't touch my cookie, you can only do this, no tongue. I was like, whoa, you've done this before. They're like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. So here's your parameters, stay within those. And I was still kind of like, ugh. Like it's weird.
Yeah, and then
I'm just waiting.
If you do get wood, do they get mad? I told you.
I was going to ask that. Is there anybody that's like, it's okay if you have a throbbing erection and if it's really pronounced, that's okay. You know?
I had one partner that was gorgeous. She actually used to work on Battlestar Galactica and stuff when I started training back in Vancouver. And I remember like she was not worried about it. She's like, oh yeah, I've like practically like had sex and scenes and stuff. And I was like, whoa. So she wanted to come and rehearse. And I remember that's when me and my wife first started dating. And my wife's like, wow, she's gorgeous and stuff like that. And she'd be like, okay, let's fully get into the scene. Let's fully make out. And like, I'll take my shirt off. And so I'm like, whoa, I don't think that's going to go over well with my girlfriend. I do not feel comfortable because I think this might go a little too far. So
let's go to your place.
It's tough.
Yeah, that's you know what? It's kind of one of those things where like you see guys that are actors making out with hot chicks. Like, have you seen Monsters Ball with Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton? I know for sure they had sex. You could see it. I stopped it just to make sure. I'm like, yeah, there's the wiener. Like I was like, and then you start thinking about becoming a male actor and all the benefits of that, but no one ever thinks about the pre-makeout scene boner conversation. You know what I mean?
It's not like, honestly, I preferred the scenes, like, especially because I used to box and, you know, growing up in Canada, I think as we all did, like we used to fight lots, small towns, we didn't have gun, like, so actually like the aggression scenes and stuff were really easy. It was really easy for me to hit that and come off organic because I've been there so many times. It just, like doing the romance scenes, because I was never a real ladies man. I wasn't like, so that like those were actually really awkward for me. And strangely enough, they'd always like fucking be like, oh, we're gonna make you like, I'm like, oh man, like I'm not good at these like scenes to be really. And then, you know, just when you are really attracted to your partner and you're like, okay, if we are madly in love, we're making out, the first things I would do would be like to grab you here and to grope you here. But when you have a partner and it's a scene, it's weird. I honestly, as cool as everybody's like, no, that sounds awesome. I'm like, no, it's not awesome.
It'd just be funny if you just smacked her ass and she was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, no, that's what
you never said it. It wasn't a ground rule.
No, and see, and that's why it was like, and just such a simple thing, setting those ground rules. But by like the third time I did it, one of the, like, you tell, she'd work TV in Vancouver all the time. And she said, boom, here's your parameters. And I was like, oh man, why didn't I just do that with my other partners? That would make things so much easier instead of guessing like, okay, if I grab her here, is the audience going to think I'm a perv? Or like, that's what I would really do if I was making out with somebody I cared about or was really into. Like,
I know this probably isn't going to mean anything to any of you here, but I know I wouldn't be good at this because I actually have a boner right now.
I talked to a buddy of mine who's a comedian. His name's Craig
I have
Gass,
to go, guys. Adam, good to see you. I got to go grab a daughter. Something.
Okay, do your thing.
Yeah. Take care.
Lachlan Cruz, 95.7. Lachlan Cross, 95.7 Cruise FM. I'll end with this. Is a friend of mine named Craig Gass. He was on Sex and the City, and he was on for a few episodes. He played Cynthia Nixon's lover. And one day of filming, he had to perform oral sex in and around that area on her for 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours of filming. Yeah. And I said to him, what was that like? And he goes, well, we had the conversation, you know, what can I give? And I said, what were her rules? She goes, she didn't really have any. She just said she didn't shower that day, so it might not smell great.
What the fuck? Was that a joke?
Wow.
And I said, how was it? And he goes, 4 hours. She was 100% right. Like, but he was getting paid some pretty great money, and it was a good gig for him. And so he literally stayed there. He said his neck was sore for like 3 weeks. He didn't get too close to it because he couldn't, but he said it smelled like an old shoe. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not always sexy, right, Scorgie?
No, it's not, and the film industry is hurry up and wait. So you're there all day. It's a long process. It's draining. It's tough. I think that's the biggest misconception with actors is always like, oh, they're like, it's not, dude, acting is fucking hard to be on point. You're on a big set. You have to show emotion. You're on the big sets and it's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. And you have to be there and fucking like hit it and be on point. And it's tough. I found, look, it was easier for me to produce, raise the money, and do this difficult world of docs than it was to fucking act. Acting is fucking hard. And when you meet and I was in New York with something like, you'd meet people that could speak 4 languages, tap dance, fucking hip hop dance, do accents on a fly, sing, and then there'd be me. They'd be like, "Oh, well, I can read lines, okay." I
look great in underwear.
Yeah, I looked okay in underwear at the time. So you realize really quick, I was like, "Okay, fuck." There's level, like anything in life. There's levels of talent, right? And I was definitely much more successful on the producing side, clearly.
Yeah, you have been. Adam Scorgie is our guest. Appreciate you being here, Adam. Check him out. You can go and get the new Bisping doc on Showtime in Canada. It's going to get wide release. What's that? Super Channel? Pardon me, Super Channel.
Can I give you props? Can I just quickly give him props?
Yeah.
Adam, I'd like to give you props for your Bob Probert documentary was dope. It was so
thanks,
good.
Man. Yeah. So thank you. That's Jordy Day's brainchild there, and I was fortunate enough to come on there, obviously, because I'd produce Ice Guardian. So I love being in the hockey world and the tough guy thing. That's thanks, man. That one's crushing it on Amazon Prime right now. It was like number 2 next at Christmas time. It was like Chevy Chase's Christmas, Probert Doc, and Home Alone were like the 3 most streamed things in Canada during Christmas.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, the Probert doc was incredible. All your work is terrific, and we appreciate you being here, dude. Thank you very, very, very much, Adam.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Will you come back again?
Of course.
All right.
Yeah, I'm local here in Edmonton with some of the other boys, and happy to jump on anytime. I like podcasts as a way to even just kind of get my thoughts out as I'm going. It's a nice way in these organic formats where we're not interrupting each other, and we talk, and we can get good points, and even make me, critically think about things that I've been thinking about. So thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, dude, appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for coming. Bonzi.
Yes, sir.
How far are you from Waco?
I'm like literally 15 minutes away. As soon as I'm done this podcast, I'm going there. We're going to do some filming. From what I understand, there's always somebody there checking it out as well. So I'm hopefully I'll get some good interviews from people there as well.
Like other psychos that want to go to the scene of a mass murder?
Well,
you should try to find the houses that are like the closest houses and then go speak to them as if because they could have been living there when it happened and try to get like a firsthand account or something,
Could have. I'm not sure how welcoming it would be. And it is Texas. I do have a bulletproof vest on board, but I'm not packing any heat. So I'm not sure I'm going to go rat-a-tat-tatting on some crazy store out and fucking.
Did you really get a bulletproof vest? Is that for real?
I brought one. I used to work for Brinks years and years and years ago. So it was sitting in my house. It was either, I don't know, sell it for what, a couple $100 or not even, or just bring it with me because I am going to Texas. So
yeah, no shit.
I just thought I'll bring it.
Wow. So if anybody is curious, Bonzi, at Bonzi Live, you can follow him on Twitter or Tripping with Bonzi on YouTube. He is making his way across the United States. He's fresh off a bout of food poisoning. He's on his way to Waco, Texas, to go and check out the David Koresh Branch Davidian compound. What's that?
Your sentence. Say that sentence again. Tell me. Hey, excuse me, Dean. What is Bonzi up to in the next 48 hours? Go ahead.
I couldn't repeat what I just said, dude. It just came out. I can't just redo it. I'm not like a trained circus elephant.
He's hanging out in Waco, Texas. In about 10 minutes, the Mexicans that he almost food poisoned are going to take him to Waco, Texas, so he can see the Branch Davidian complex that's no longer there because it burned to the ground many years ago.
Mass murder.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that is left there is like the remains of there's the pool still exists. I think it's all green and gross now, but I don't know. I think it'll just be neat to kind of see it and be there and check it out.
You should get some grass or some dirt. Put it in a jar and label it Branch Davidian.
Bits
I
of
do have
cult
an empty
members.
gas station weed jar, so I could fill it up.
Yeah,
it's empty already.
No, I got other ones now.
It's got a few jars. Yeah,
cycles through it. But
okay.
Well, good for you, dude. I'm excited to see what you see there tomorrow because I watched the Waco documentary. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it. Great.
Oh, fuck. It's unbelievable. And if you've watched that documentary, you know two things. A, the guy was batshit crazy and a total pedophile. But B, the FBI and ATF absolutely bungled the whole thing. And nobody needed to die. Maybe him, but nobody needed to die in that thing. And when you watch the doc, you don't realize how many people died.
Yeah. 81, I believe, right?
Yeah. A ton of people died.
Crazy.
Kids. So it's like a piece of fascinating, macabre history, right? But I'm excited to see what you see there. I'm excited to find out because I was fascinated with the documentary. And then I went down this, as I normally do, these rabbit holes of when you watch a show and you're like, I need to learn more about that. So I studied the Branch Davidians, which is like Seventh-day Adventist, but it's on fucking crack. But this guy was literally crazy, and he plied people with ice cream. That's how he did it. It's like, fuck, everybody likes ice cream.
It should be interesting to just see and kind of check out what's there. Like you said, I'm not sure if I'll go ratting on anybody's doors or stuff, but if somebody's maybe out on the property around the area, I might go over and say hi and ask if I can ask them a few questions if they were there back in the day.
If the pimp bus is in the background, I think you'll be fine because they'll just be like confused. You'll be fine. It'll be good.
I think so. And then I'm staying at a wicked campground tonight in it's called Lake Waco, and it's like literally the sites are on the hill, and then you look down over the lake. So pretty stoked to go there for the next couple nights, and then Austin, Texas, in a couple days, which is going to be just fantastic.
Just South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. Normally, is that where South by Southwest is? Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame that there's nothing going on because I heard Austin's a fucking great city. Like an awesome city.
And I got a bunch of friends there that from childhood and also from that I met in Nicaragua. So got some great things lined up where the comedy scene there is killing it right now. It's even though, COVID and everything, but with everybody having the vaccinations and stuff there, the comedy scene's huge there right now. And then the music scene's really starting to pick up as well. So I think we'll
Can you go in and see a show? Like, are they having live shows down in Texas now?
100%, dude. 100%. Wow. So I'm looking at getting some comedians on board the bus in the studio here. And, we'll just get some great interviews from comedians, hopefully some bands. Actually, I got 2 bands lined up for interviews in Austin. So, yeah, I'm really excited to check out some cool stuff there.
Awesome. Well, listen, we'll follow you. We appreciate it. I know I tweeted out this thing. He hates Canada now all of a sudden. I called Toronto Satan, Ontario the other day. Because he's like, now you might as well just fucking stay there.
Might be a little overstated, but yeah.
I'm not sure I used the word Satan, but I think I said you could suck on it, Ontario, because it was snowing there yesterday, and it was beautiful blue sky and sunny in Texas. So I was just like, I'm kind of glad I'm not up there. With all the bullshit, can't golf. That's just the most ridiculous thing to me. So I'm happy being down in Texas, and I'm looking forward to going over to New Mexico, Arizona, and then into Cali. And then the longer I'm here, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, dude, love following you. And you can follow Bonzi at Bonzi Live on Twitter, or Tripping with Bonzi on YouTube as well. On Snapchat, you got the Snapchat?
No, I don't got the Snapper. I got TikTok, TikTok, and Instagram.
All right. What are your handles?
At Bonzi Live.
Bonzi Live, same thing. Okay.
Yep.
There you go. Follow his trip, Midlife Crisis Tour 2021. Woo!
Goodbye, Bonzi.
Goodbye, James.
Bonzi.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you soon. Thanks, James. Appreciate you being here, dude.
Yeah, I was here today.
That was fun. I didn't think you were going to make it to today's podcast. I thought you were up.
No, that's tomorrow's podcast. And who's on tomorrow's podcast that I'm missing?
J.M. Guarnieri. He's Obama's former Secret Service agent. We're talking aliens tomorrow, which would be fun because he knows where they are.
So it's starting at 5.
Says he does, but never fucking says anything about it. What's that?
Yeah, it started at 5. Come on.
See what you can do. I set the time at 3.
Okay.
They got to work early.
I should probably announce, I'm going to post it, that the Noam Chomsky interview will be now on May 6th instead of May 4th. And then we'll have Glenn Greenwald on the launch instead.
Blackballed the podcast with James
Blackballed with James DeFiore. And it's also funny because I didn't freak out, Dean, for the first time in my life when he's like, I can't do the 4th. Can we make it the 6th? And I was like, oh, fuck. This is going to take a week. And it took like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I even tried to make him feel guilty as a joke. I was like, just as an aside, it was Star Wars Day, Professor Chomsky. Kind of ruined it. Yoda.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't care.
He's the Yoda of progressive politics. I hope he doesn't see this.
So there you go. Blackballed James D. Fiore, the podcast on the 4th with Glenn Greenwald.
Yes.
Snowden's handler. And kind of. And then Noam Chomsky, one of the world's most important activists. That'll be on the 6th. Really excited for your podcast, dude.
That's
Thanks
at 1 p.m. on the 6th, but I'll put out a bunch of shit. So
I know.
Okay.
Okay, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dean.
No problem, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. James D. Fiore. At James D. Fiore on Twitter. Blackballmedia.ca is where you can find him as well. Great cat. Thanks to everybody for hanging out with us today. Thanks to our friends over at Blue microphones. I use one, the Blue Yeti X. It's the one right in front of you. It's got the USB thing. You plug it into your computer. You're good to go. No preamps, no dicking around, no nothing. Everything's inside this microphone that sounds unbelievable. BlueMic.com or at Blue Microphones on Twitter. Check out everything they have to offer, including these MoFi headphones. Love them. And they got a ton of different stuff, like the old classic Yeti. They got the bottle cap mics. They've got tons of mics, musician mics. They've got stuff that goes in the end of your trumpet or trombones. Bizarre. Everybody needs microphones. Knowing the way the world works, it's where we are. Anyway, thanks to our friends over at Blue Microphones, the official microphone of the DeanBlundell.com podcast network. Also, our friends at Gitch3 is your promo code. If you want great underwear, fellas, my friend Ed has them. They're called Gitch. Super easy to remember. Gitch3, your promo code. Go to edsfineimports.com. Order 3 pair. You get the 4th for free when you use that promo code. Luxury underwear. You'll never buy another pair again. I have pairs for like last year and a half. Haven't even looked like I've washed them. And I do wash them. I wash my underwear religiously. But these things are sturdy. They're comfortable. They're tight, but not too tight. When I say tight, they keep everything in, but they also allow some breathing in the front with the pouch that you got. That's where your junk goes. Gitch is the name of the underwear. edsfineimports.com. Ordered online with promo code Gitch3, and it'll send you an extra pair for free. Domination, dmntn.com. Dominate with content. If you go to dmntn.com and you produce content like this, they've got some AI that'll make it a lot easier, like 70, 80 pieces in 5-6 minutes. It doesn't take hours to produce one promo. Adam has nailed it. Artificial intelligence. Who'd have thought? Replacing real intelligence. Doesn't take much. Go to dmntn.com today. Thanks to our friends at Black Rose Organics as well. Black Rose Organics. Shop.blackroseorganics.com. You'll get your license in like minutes, your medical license. So if your insurance company covers your cannabis consumption, that medicine, they want to help you out. Not only that, $175 ounces for quads. Are you kidding me? Garlic sherbet, 30%. You can't find medicine like that anywhere else. And not only do they want to make it easier, you also get part of the medical membership program, which is huge. You can suggest, hey, other people, you want to get your license? Go to shop.blackroseorganics.com. You fill out your thing. They get your license, and then you get to shop. You can bypass every OCS store. Everybody that wants to do this, you should do it. Go to blackroseorganics.com and check them out today. Thanks to our friends at Black Rose. I think that's it. I think I nailed it. Have a great day. DeanBlundell.com. Sign up for a newsletter. Thanks for hanging out with us. Enjoy it. Bye.
Not Woods.
Oh, shit. I think we need to hear that again. I loved it so much. Everybody has to laugh.